Zoom, and sometimes that hangs up my technology. All right. Thanks, everyone. If we're ready to jump in, Mr. Handy, we're good?
Yeah, looks like we're good.
All right. I see plenty of folks on. So let's call to order the Nevada State Board on Indigent Defense Services public meeting for October 23rd, 2025. And we'll start with a roll call if we could.
Okay. Kate Thomas,
I'm here.
Joni Easley.
Yes, I'm on the phone.
Okay. Chris June Kellyani. Jeff Wells. Susan Bush.
Present.
Angela Cook. Lorena Dellinger.
I'm here.
Joe Krim.
Here.
Allison Jaffe. Dave Mendiola.
Present.
Jared Hickman.
Present, and good afternoon.
Justice William Maupin. David Figler.
Present.
Oh, and then Abigail Ferrerson.
Hey,
We have 8 people.
we have a quorum. All right. Chris G was just on the training that we had prior to this, the ethics training. So I suspect she'll be joining us soon. Although we did say as we were wrapping that meeting, see you at 1:30, and so that got me a little twisted. So sorry.
I
It's
sent
okay,
her,
Homa.
I did send her an email that said it started at 1. So
Thank you. Awesome. All right. Well, then let's jump in and see if we have any public comment. Is there anyone online or in the public that wishes to speak?
Yes, I wish to speak.
Hi, Franny. Please
Hi,
go for it.
this is Franny Forsman. I'm the former federal public defender for the District of Nevada and a co-counsel on the Davis case. I hope that you've read the 16th Monitor report because it raises serious concerns, not only about deficiencies that are presently in the program. You can also tell that from at least the recount of what the supervising attorneys, David Sheik et al., have found in their own oversight functions. I'd like to focus on just one area, but I'd also like to add that also in the monitor's report, I think it's important to note that this board needs to step up its oversight of this agency. And I think this area that I'm going to talk about will point out what the problem is. I've reviewed many vouchers in my 40 or so years of doing this work, and it's a very delicate function because the easiest way to drive lawyers away from doing this work is to nickel and dime them or to deny requests or to reduce vouchers. We are hearing that lawyers are thinking of leaving or leaving the lists because of the of those kind of activities happening with vouchers. If this is particularly a problem with this agency for 2 reasons. One, there is no lawyer in the agency who has done the work, who has the experience to be able to determine reasonableness of a voucher based on their own experience. The second problem is you can't use comparison with other lawyers. That should not be the basis anyway, because it should be an individualized review. But you can't use comparisons here because you know from the data that not enough time is being put into these cases by the lawyers that you're seeking to compare these lawyers to. I urge this board to get involved in the issues that are raised today so that, for instance, with this issue, you could consider creating another. I hate to have another level of bureaucracy, but because there are no experienced criminal defense lawyers in the agency, that you create someone else to assist with voucher review that has credibility, that is able to talk to lawyers about the work that they do, and knows how much time it takes to do the tasks that are involved and to get the experts or the investigators or the second counsel that are needed. You also have the excellent work of Washoe, Clark, and the federal system with voucher review. They've got lots of years of putting into it, and they know what needs to go into it. So I'm asking that you first that the board get information with regard to the extent of voucher reduction, delay in processing the vouchers because they need to be revised, and determine, how much reduction and how much denial of services is going on. And that secondly, you think of some ways that you can ameliorate that so that we don't drive the lawyers that we do have, because it's the good lawyers that are going to leave. So that's my request that the board exercise some additional oversight in this area. And I think there are others that you will see, particularly when you read through the monitor's report. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. As we all know, there's a agenda item to dive more deeply into the updates. So anyone else for public comment? All right, seeing none. Thank you. We'll move into item number 3, which is introduction of new board members. And I am
I'll just go right now. We're expecting some new appointments, but those have not been received yet.
okay. So we will hold that one for when we do have another appointment. I'm happy to report that the Board of County Commissioners here at Washoe County suggested my name to the governor as being reappointed to the board. So fingers crossed that he agrees. Otherwise, I'll dip out and turn it over to someone else. But let's move on to item number 4 along those lines, which is the election of our board chair and vice chair.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think if something isn't broken, then it should not be our job to break it. So my motion is to reappoint the current board chair and vice chair.
All right. Thank you. I have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Madam
Well,
Chair?
is there
Yeah.
anyone else that's interested? I mean, whether things are broken or not, who knows? But
Sure. That's a
I'm not
great.
putting myself in for anything, by the way.
Oh,
I'm just
all right,
curious if
David.
there's
I
anyone-
was gonna
I'm not.
say I'm fully open if somebody else would like to take the reins. I am all about it. So yeah.
Is there a second?
Madam Chair. can I
Otherwise,
interrupt before we
I'd
do
like
that?
to second.
Okay. Thank you, Ms.
Madam
Jaffe.
Chair?
Mr. Mendiola, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, so I would, I announced and I sent a message over to our team and let them know that I am going to be resigning from the board as of December 31st. So I would not be a good choice for vice chair. So we might want to find somebody else for that.
That is true. All right. Well, thank you. And that is correct. Thank you, Mr. Mendiola. I appreciate that.
Then, Madam Chair, I will withdraw my motion and make a new motion to reelect you as board chair.
Thank you very much. We can start with that, or we could package it together. Do we have a recommendation for a vice chair? Because not seeing one, I'm happy to recommend Chris G, if she would be interested. Just thinking of balancing it out with somebody that.
Is he on the call?
Not here.
Well, and that's even more reason is, right? When you're not on the call,
Exactly.
it tends to lend itself to having, I don't think she's on. I'm looking through the.
No, she's not.
All right. Well, then I'll withdraw that as a comment. Mr. Hickman, are you on?
I am, and I was going to suggest that if he is willing, I think Mr. Figler may be a good vice chair.
I appreciate that. There are some circumstances going on right now that would not make that prudent. So
Understood.
I appreciate you, Mr. Hickman.
Mr. Hickman, would you at all be interested in serving as the vice chair?
Yes, I will serve as vice chair.
We will coordinate accordingly. I promise to be in good communication if the motion.
Great minds think alike. Jared, I was just looking at you thinking you're a chair, really.
I would second the motion for both Kate and Jared.
Actually, my motion was only for Kate, so I'll amend my motion to include Jared as vice chair.
I'll
Thank you.
amend my second then to include Jared
It's clunky,
as
but it
vice chair.
works. I appreciate it. All right, so we've got a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any more discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all of those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposition to the motion? All right, you have approval of your chair and vice chair, Mr. Handy. Moving on, let's go to item number 5, which is the approval of the minutes from the June 26, 2025 board meeting. Are there any comments on the minutes? Folks
I'll
have a
just briefly
chance.
raise, we did receive some public comment
Thank you.
from Ms. Fitzsimmons that was sent out to the board regarding prior meeting minutes. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read those. Those are also going to be attached to the meeting materials from the prior 2 meetings to ensure that the record is complete from Ms. Fitzsimmons' point of view.
Okay. Does anybody else have comments on the minutes from the 26th of June? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion. This is Dave Mendiola.
Thank you, Dave / Candace, which I love how that says on your screen. All right, thank you, Dave. Do I have a second to on the minutes from the 26th of June? All right, well,
This is Joe, and I would second those.
thank you, Mr. Krim. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, well, that'll wrap up.
Kate, sorry, can I jump in? I
Yes, Ms. Jo.
abstain. I was not at the last meeting.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, likewise, I also abstained. I was not present at the last meeting either.
Thank you.
Does that affect our quorum?
Well, and if we've got our DAG on, last I had checked, if you weren't at a meeting, you could still vote on the minutes. So if someone could confirm that for this,
You absolutely can.
thank you.
Yeah, this is Senior DAG Todd Wise. That's correct. You don't need to have been in a meeting to approve the minutes.
Great, thank you. I think either way we have still a quorum. So with that, we'll go ahead and everybody in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Again, aye.
Aye.
All right. No opposition, no other abstentions. Those will pass and we'll move right on to number 6, which is our Davis litigation update. And I believe we have our monitor on, but I don't know if you want to kick it off, Mr. Handy, before we turn that over.
Yeah, I'll just give a brief update before we go over that. And there are kind of a few things I wanted to highlight, and maybe Professor Anand wants to also highlight those things or other things from the report. The report was sent out when we received it to everybody as part of the meeting materials. I hope you've had a chance to go through it. There are a couple of things I wanted to highlight, like I said. The first one really is that executive summary, right, that it happens on page 3 that discusses the compliance issues, particularly like the things like failure to comply with workload standards due to insufficient attorneys, right? These are our priorities of the department to try and come into compliance with the amended consent judgment. Oversight to ensure compliance with performance standards, the delegation, standing counsel, and uniform workload reporting. So those are really becoming the big focus of the agency. When it comes to things like workload standards due to insufficient attorneys, we're trying to work to get things like weekend stipends rolled out in a way that the counties are starting to pay them. We just submitted a work program today to pay travel stipends to NSPD employees so they can get a stipend in addition to reimbursement for going out to the rural counties and performing the work. Hopefully we'll get that some feedback on that from Board of Examiners meeting that would be set for the December IFC meeting. We're working with the counties to continue to get them to incentivize new attorneys to come into their counties and perform the work. Oversight, we haven't had a chance to contract with another oversight person yet. We have been retasking Derek Lopez. For a while, David Sheik was on sabbatical, so he covered some different counties in the South. And we're going to have him cover some of the counties that John Kylick was previously covering in the North until we can secure another contractor for those. The person we thought we were going to be able to contract with hasn't reached back out to us, so we're trying to explore other options right now. We'll probably get into more detail on that a little bit later during the oversight update. Delegation and standing counsel, we are still running into this issue in Lyon County where we're not able to determine exactly how many attorneys are in a couple of these offices. We've reached out to Cale Brock a few times, and he doesn't have any actual subcontracts with attorneys, which is concerning for a lot of reasons, in part because we can't then see who's doing the work. it's obfuscating, I think, for the county who has to oversee these contracts to what they're actually getting out of these service providers for the amounts that they're paying for these contracts. These aren't small contracts. They have huge caseloads and they require a lot of time and a lot of effort. And we have ongoing concerns. And I think the county has ongoing concerns about whether just one attorney can manage these. Um, we do have some other information, at least for the other firm working in Lyon County, Mansfield and Mayo. They do have, it looks like 4 full-time attorneys in the office, and it looks like 1 part-time attorney in the office. At least one of those attorneys is still providing significant amount of service in Humboldt County. So it's not enough to meet all of the obligations of that firm across multiple counties. There have been some issues I'll get into later when we talk about things like compliance with the new amended judgment. I'm going to have a whole presentation on how we're analyzing the NSPD's workloads, including contractors for the office. There's clearly some legal server reporting problems that are happening across the counties. So going forward, we're going to have a lot of training, small groups, office hours to help these attorneys understand what reporting needs to look like, what case opening needs to look like, because there's a lot of duplication of cases, a lot of duplication of efforts among the different people involved. And we're not capturing the right data, and it's causing these kind of large problems to either be more easily hidden, or we don't have enough information to make better choices as to whether we should be reallocating cases or performing corrective action in counties. So that's going to be one of the more immediate things we're getting into in the next month or two. In Nye County, hopefully we've made a correction, worked with the attorneys and the county to make a correction for the standing counsel function. What they've done now is they set up a track system, so there are 4 attorneys assigned to a track A and 4 attorneys that are assigned to a track B. They have similar ranges of qualification levels, but that's so that they can all be in court in just one day. In Nye County, they have 2 justice courts in Pahrump that go at the same time on one day. The attorneys can't be in 2 places at once. It was resulting in either standby counsel. It seems like covering a lot of cases for the other attorneys who weren't in that day or who might have been trying to appear remotely or might be in other courts. It's not clear entirely. But this should allow that the attorneys can all be in just one place at one time, respond to all their clients' needs and the court's attention on those days so that they don't have to be appearing remotely, so they don't have to be running from courtroom to courtroom, and can actually be present when those cases are called and attend to them. So far, it seems like that's working appropriately. There's been some issues because there haven't been CAD attorneys, qualified attorneys in both tracks. Now there should be. So there have been some issues kind of for the higher level cases, still need to do that back and forth in the justice courts. Hopefully, as time goes on, we'll see that hopefully drop down so that we're not seeing things like standing counsel or like, docket clearing counsel or cleanup counsel kinds of things where the attorney who actually represents the client isn't available or present, and instead somebody else is standing it, because it's not best practice. It doesn't meet the indigent defense function standards. It's something that really does a disservice to a lot of the clients, and I think the attorneys out there are cognizant of that now, and hopefully things will proceed better going forward. The other couple of things I had highlighted here were, I went over that delegation issues again, because that's such a major problem. And then page 18 of the report, there are the recommendations of the monitor. If you haven't already reviewed those, I think those are, again, we use this as a roadmap as to what we're going to be working on next. So things like reaching out to the NAPD. We did reach out to them to ask for technical assistance for both more broadly the department, also specifically for the State Public Defender's Office, to see if they can work to kind of do an evaluation of where the office is at, how performance can be better, how the model inside the office could be reworked if that's needed, how we can work better to improve communication among the employees in that office, even though they're working in remote locations, streamline policies and procedures, things like that. So far, we haven't heard back from the NAPD, so we're going to be reaching out again just to bother them, because they really are kind of top tier providers of this kind of knowledge. They work with other system builders in states that will consist of them as well. States like Kentucky, Washington, Oregon. So we'll be reaching out to them again, as well as kind of our counterparts in those other states, to see if they have any lessons learned or best practices going forward for a lot of things that have been touched on. And the other thing I was going to bring to attention was also mentioned in public comment, was that the board considering a statutory role in oversight and kind of serving as the need. We have a board where there are persons who have served as public defenders who have a lot of experience in that space. And like we mentioned last meeting, we don't have a lot of that actual on the ground experience as public defenders. So your input would be extremely valuable. Direction you have would be very helpful. I don't think, you need to form a subcommittee and we have to do this, 2 or 3 times a year, but if just one or two of you would be available or could be in like a support role for us as we go forward and kind of work through these things in the next few months, that would be extremely helpful from our perspective.
May
And
I
that's
ask
kind of my report.
a question?
Go ahead, Mr. Hickman. Sorry.
Mr. Haney, would it be useful to set up a regular cadence to, meet with you and your staff at the office to fill in, to kind of help in that support role? Would that be something that's useful to you?
Absolutely. I think, standing bi-weekly or monthly meeting would go a long ways to helping kind of improve what we're doing here from, that practice perspective.
Okay. I mean, in terms of scheduling, I think I can assist monthly if that is a useful cadence.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take whatever we can get, really, but I think that's a good cadence to have. That's what a lot of the speed of our, functions are monthly, or sometimes even longer than that, depending on what the things are. So, yeah, that would be extremely helpful.
Okay. Let's if we can communicate after the fact, I'd be happy to set that up.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And Mr. Handy, I would be willing to help with that too, especially with structures and tracks and stuff.
Thank you again. Really appreciate the help. And, if the times don't work out where you can both meet at the same time, we can work out different times to meet with each of you individually, or whoever else wants to be involved, so long as we're not, violating OML in the process. So.
Well, it is with the risk of making it a public meeting. If three of us come in, I'd like to be involved in that as well. As far as monthly, I think having all of us who have been there doing this monthly would be a really beneficial thing. So yeah, put my name in there too.
Great. Expect emails. And that's all I have for the report, just on the monitor report. I don't know if Professor Hanan wanted to jump in and give some more background information, anything.
Yeah, sure. If that's if the chair
That would be great.
that's great. All right. Well, thank you so much to Executive Director Handy for going over those aspects of the report, but also the department's plans moving forward with that. I think just to frame this, what I would like to say is that the issues in the report are really not new. I've been reporting on the same issues for so many quarterly reports that that's why in this report, I think the only thing that was completely new was saying like what maybe the board could step up and provide more direction and assistance to the department because some of these problems have really been intractable. Now, with the amendment to the settlement, to the consent judgment, the state has until August to comply with the workload standards, get enough attorneys. But in the meantime, especially oversight attorney David Cheek is reporting, the house is on fire in terms of compliance with the Sixth Amendment in Nye County. And that's been going on now 6 months, a year and on, both because it's a revolving door, there's stand-in counsel, people leave their contracts. I think we don't even know the extent of the failures of representation that probably have happened because he only has a small window into that. He's not there all the time. So to me, I'm greatly concerned that that the department doesn't have enough presence in all of the counties to know what's really happening and see that the indices of competent and effective assistance of counsel, which are listed in the settlement agreement and the judgment, are actually being honored in the counties. And part of that is a problem of the structure relying so much on the counties. But then I think the second piece is, and this comes from the statute as well, is knowing when corrective action plans are appropriate or when instead it's appropriate to continue to use, I guess, not that it's not diplomatic, but only diplomatic channels to try to encourage the counties to increase the amount for the contracts or do something different to make things work better. So I think that's another area where perhaps the board would be able to assist the department. As of my last report, there were no corrective action plans, yet there are significant problems that are not just about number of attorneys in many of these locations. And the other thing I did new in this report was to talk a little bit about how little time was being spent on cases, at least by some attorneys, some of the time. The workload standards are meant to set an average amount of time. So if somebody has 3 or 4 or 10 or maybe even 20 cases, it's hard to say whether they're over or underworking a case because cases are so different. Like some cases do plead out very early and others require just an immense amount of work. But in Nye County, for example, and you can see the numbers, I did the numbers in there, there's just pervasive and persistent uh, low numbers of hours being recorded per case, which suggests and seems to go along with not using investigators, not consulting with experts, perhaps not having more than one meeting with a client, even in a case which is a serious felony where the client is deciding whether to plead guilty or go to trial and so forth. So all of those are just my attempts to do a little oversight with the documents that I have. But there's so much more that needs to be done there to really understand what's happening in these counties. The structure is difficult. The counties have a lot of authority, and with contract attorneys, it's harder to ensure that they're all on board. And then the last thing I'll say is I wonder if the department could use more support in trainings. I understand, and it sounds like the annual conference is a great success, but I haven't seen come across my email at least many CLEs or trainings that could be directly targeted towards what the oversight attorneys, hopefully the third one will come back on line again. We'll get a third oversight attorney, what they're really seeing. So I'm available to answer any questions you have on my report. I really appreciate you taking the time to read it and consider it as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor. I know when I read it, one of the things that I was questioning was kind of what the direction was being proposed in the most recent report. Like it triggered, do we want to have the oversight committee report to the department more regularly? Are there areas that I just was trying to understand what you see and board members, I'm open to discussion on what we see as the board's role in reading and assisting with the reports. I'm a big fan of no board overstep, but at the same time, we want to be a resource. So I'd open it up for folks to talk a little bit through, for those of you that have read it or contemplated what we think could be helpful, and certainly Director Handy as well.
If I could follow that, Chair, with a question to Professor Hanan. Professor, you emphasized the board's functions of additional audits, investigation, and review. I guess from your perspective, are there additional materials that are not currently provided by the board that you think are absent that we need to fulfill this function? And then sort of a corollary is, because of the varied makeup of the board, you referenced NAPD trainings. Are you aware of any group that provides public defense oversight board trainings that could help us, get into the weeds a little further?
Oh, thank you for that. To just start with the last point, I think NAPD does some trainings for oversight boards as well, or they have in the past, but that would be a good place to start. There's also the Deason Center for Criminal Justice out of Texas, and they've had a lot of presentations with they sort of mix academics and on the ground folks who are part of indigent defense commissions and so forth. So that might be another resource. And I'll look into that and try to add it into my next report as well. In terms of documentation, one issue is for the oversight attorneys, and I believe that one of them, Derek Lopez, mentioned this at the last board meeting, was interested in hearing a little bit more about what he should focus on, what he should look towards, what he should prioritize in his reports. So John Cadlick was writing shorter reports, a little bit more checking through the basics. David Sheik the reports look very different. So I think one question is, how do the oversight attorneys know what to look for and what to prioritize, and much support versus feedback to give the attorneys that they see And then how does that information get reported back to you all as well? So those pieces of it, when Deputy Director Qualls was with DIDS, he would summarize many of the reports, which I think is helpful. But I hear, at least from the oversight attorneys, that they're looking for more direction as well in what they should be doing. Now, the other types of data are complaints about attorneys made by clients or judges or others. Um, and I think that would be something that would be worth looking at. I know that there may be, I know that DITS is considered confidentiality issues with clients as well, but that can be useful. And looking at, I think looking at requests for reimbursement for investigators and experts is also helpful to see whether they're being used, because I am concerned. I'm just hearing about it, about a potential that there have been denials of requests, and I don't know whether that's the case or not for experts and investigators. But when I look at the data, I'm more concerned that they're not being used enough. It's investigation prior to advising someone whether to plead guilty is, a hallmark of effective representation.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments based on Professor's comments? Mr. Handy, do you have anything you want to add? Board members?
I do just a couple of things. Having read Professor Hanan's report in depth, and I think just emphasizing the words "on fire" when it comes to Nye County. I guess the first time, and I have a couple of comments I want to make, but I think this is probably the most prevalent. What can we as a board do to either impress upon Nye County that systemically these recommendations need to be implemented? Or are we just, short of litigation, which I don't think anyone wants a Davis 2 just for Nye, can we do? Because that does seem to be the most acute, and was mentioned in my first meeting, and, looking at, the evaluator reports, especially going through all of David Sheik's reports. It all seems to support what Professor Hernan has concluded. So I guess the first question, maybe to Peter through the chair, is what are our tools to get Nye into compliance with Davis, because they seem to be dragging the rest of the system down. And then I do have a couple of follow-up questions for Professor Hernan, but that one seems to have the most urgency.
Mr. Handy?
So generally our toolbox is pretty limited. We can diplomatically work with the county to help achieve compliance. That's our main tool. That's the one we want to use. We want counties to volunteer, to receive the funding, to pay out the funds, to get into compliance. We have some other tools, like in some cases we might be able to withhold funds or something for reimbursement if we can see, an attorney's reporting no time that we can review. We can't, I don't think, reasonably reimburse that cost to the county if it looks like they paid an attorney $200,000 over the course of the year, but they've billed 0 hours, entered 0 hours of reports. That's a pretty heavy-handed tool, because then we're forcing the county to outlay these funds. The other is corrective action. And corrective action kind of puts a more formal spin on working with the counties to then develop a new plan that's going to get them into compliance. The kind of fallback position for corrective action plans is having the Nevada State Public Defender take over providing services in the county. That kind of a fallback doesn't work very well if we can't fully staff a public defender's office at the state public defender level. And, as we've discussed, as the monitors reported for, I think, years now, right? We don't have a robustly built state public defender's office. They don't have, a bunch of positions or a bunch of funding. And while we could go and ask the legislature for those funds, should we go through this corrective action process, it doesn't mean that we can actually fill the positions, even if we get the funding. The pay that goes to state public defenders isn't, it's not even close to most local public defender salaries. It's well below Washoe and Clark salary scales. It's below Carson City Public Defender and Elko County Public Defender scales. So we're trying to work in as many ways we can to help improve the situation of people willing to work at the public defender's office. But until that office is really built and there are like a critical mass of staff and they're appropriately funded, it makes it not a good option for corrective action. And that kind of leaves us in, well, we could have the NSPD take over and then hire contractors directly. We could get a bunch of funding and then maybe Andrew can work with local attorneys to then contract with them. But that's a slow process. As you know, the state moves at a snail's pace. The county could be more nimble and can outlay those funds much more rapidly. The board kind of in its role you can tell me to do one of those things. Like I don't disagree, right? Nye County has it's probably our biggest problem for the counties right now because they don't have enough folks. There's clearly some problems with representation in that place and well those places Pahrump, Beatty, and Tonopah, right? There are some systemic issues like the closure of the Tonopah jail and prisoner transport. There are a lot of not good things happening there, some of which we can impact and some of which we can't. So there's no straight line, I guess, that I have. I don't have, whatever that particular tool is in my tool belt to say this will solve the problem right away. Hypothetically, right, if we got some of the asks we had in the last legislative session, like an alternate public defender's office that had a bucket of money to contract with folks, right, and they could then say, we're going to spend as much money as it takes to hire 4 more contractors. They'll be working at the behest of the state alternate public defender, and they'll come in and cover the needed case, coverage. That'd be a starting point until the system was redesigned or completely overhauled or the NSPD became a functional office. But right now, like I'm saying, the toolkit's limited. So political persuasion, if you have any leverage in Nye County, please exert what you have because this is something that's desperately needed. And I know Lorena puts in a lot of hours working on this. The DA, Brian Coonsey, is aware, and we've had a lot of conversations about how we can try to improve things that are happening. But he also doesn't have control over a lot of the county operations. He can just advise and he can do what he can within his office, but that's also stuff within his office.
I see Mr. Coates is on. Sorry, somebody else. I see Mr. Coates is on. I don't know if we want to. Kind sir, would you like to speak on all of that or any of that?
Short answer, no. No, I'm kidding. But,
would you?
Of course, our office will take on any challenge, but if we can avoid Nye, that's fine too. I was a former Nye County public defender, so I know the issues. Been there, but I will also add that Peter's been a great advocate for our office and for funding with the legislature. So we'll see how Nye goes, but like I said, if we need to, we can. It will be tough. It will be our biggest challenge yet, but we've had some big challenges. So that's all.
Thank you. Mr. Figler, did you have something?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I'm wondering if the board or if the department can fashion a sternly worded, putting them on notice and outlining some of the options that we do have, some of which might create a bit of leverage to get them to act in a way that is consistent with the mandates. I just feel like, they could kick the can down the road as long as they want because there's no real consequence. I mean, we'll see what the real consequence is in August of 2026, if it's not an extension further. So I really feel like we have to just really emphasize action in Nye because that report is just stunning. And, I think Professor Anand's done an exemplary job, but that exhibit to any sort of action against Nye is going to be ugly because of what they're not doing there. One other thing that came out of the report, just to change gears, can we confirm whether or not there are investigators or experts that are not being paid or whose requests are being denied? Because that rumor is floating around, and I don't think that's helpful for that to be sort of floating throughout the system, that there is a possibility that, it discourages people from getting investigators, right? And if that's one of our big concerns is the deficiency of utilization of investigators, I think that needs to be put to rest. So because there was some ambiguity, Peter, do we have an answer to that question, and B, if it is yes, we are denying people some or all of their fees, what would be some next action items?
Sure. Just generally, it's very rare that we actually deny somebody's application for an investigator and expert. It would have to be a very unusual circumstance. There are frequently times where we ask questions, in part because it helps us better understand what's happening in the case, what kind of experts are out there, and try to help us kind of inform us as to how we can better find experts for these kinds of things and make sure that the future requests are appropriately tailored. So we have had a lot of those things where we say, hey, you want a mitigation specialist. This isn't a capital case. This isn't a life without case. Is there a particular reason that you have for mitigation specialists? And usually attorneys respond. They give great explanations in most cases, and we almost always approve them. I'd have to defer to Brenda, who does these approvals and denials of these requests. It's rare in my experience that we deny them. The only kind of situations where we might is if there's no connection in between the requests and the case whatsoever. And we reached out and said, hey, is there something you can give us more information to see why you need this particular kind of expert from the case? Because we're not getting from A to B. And it'd only be if they're either not responsive to those questions or, I can't even think of a particular case where it's just not applicable. We generally allow things. I can think of one case where there was a request, and it might have been I'm not going to remember this off the top of my head, so hopefully I'm not too inaccurate. It was for an immigration attorney to help defend an actual immigration action, not as just consulting as to collateral consequences, right? So that's something I think I'd love to pay for that from a personal perspective, but it's not something that's within the ambit of what we can pay for. I don't think we can defend against immigration proceedings in those immigration courts, right? So that would be something that we would have to deny because it's not within our scope of paying for.
I think the quick and easy solve is that maybe on every agenda, we could have a portion devoted to denials or denial in full or part of experts or investigators, just so the entire board. Susan, you're shaking your head that's not something
because that's that's confidential information, attorney-client information that may be shared on a case that maybe we don't want to share, and information about attorneys' work.
I was thinking more along lines of from the perspective of there were 3 denials. It could even be anonymized to the extent where at least us as a board can be aware if this is an ongoing issue or not. And then whatever we are allowed to do with the rules of confidentiality, we could follow up on, at least, maybe even implement policy. But if we don't know or have a constant report, these rumors really do kind of pervade. And I think that's difficult. I think also, and I'm curious about your take on the privacy aspect or the attorney-client privilege aspect of it, is if it would be too arduous for us to ask of our contract attorneys if they could, either at the beginning of a case or when appropriate, do sort of an action plan to in their feeling, if there needs to be an investigator or an expert, that is kind of documented somewhere, cognizant of the privilege issues, and then maybe even at the end of a case, have a follow-up, which we would pay them to do, obviously, as part of their hourly, to just sort of, post-mortem. Yes, I used an expert. No, I didn't. If no, why not? And I think that eventually they would come up with their standard responses, and then we could evaluate whether or not, that needs further monitoring, because that is more of a case thing, as opposed to what we're doing with the monitors now, which is just picking these windows. It's better data for us to be able to evaluate. And again, even if anonymized, it would certainly give us more to work on as far as compliance goes than what we have now, which is really just snapshots, which are great, but like Professor Anand said, somewhat inconsistent.
Thank you. I have a couple of hands up. So I
Yeah.
really want to honor the fact that we've got some folks that are sort of queuing. So if we could just start with Christy and we'll do it that way, that'd be great.
Can I be on that queue?
Yes, I will
Thank you.
see if I can raise your hand. I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah.
I'll put you after. So I've got Christy, then Mr. Hickman,
Okay.
and then if
Yeah.
that's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 4 of the report, if no extension is made after next August, what would be the outcomes?
Can I jump on this one quickly?
Please.
So the way I don't expect, David mentioned previously that there, potentially be a future extension. I'm not working under the assumption that there are going to be any extensions.
Okay.
My plan is effectively either counties will be in compliance or in corrective action at the whatever the date is, I think it's the beginning of end of August in 2026. I don't think we can be acting in good faith to meet a deadline that the state set unless we're in that position, right? Because if it hasn't happened before, then more drastic action needs to be taken. And that's going to build a timeline in for developing things that happen at the next legislative session to truly bring the state into compliance that might not have already occurred.
Thank you, Peter. I think that's where I was trying to go. I think they've been very reasonable in granting the extensions. You got legislation passed last session to do a little bit. But our corrective action plan is too limiting. So are there thoughts of what might be pursued to better put some teeth into this? And it may not be today. I'm just saying that might be something that we can further vet at some point, because I think Nye, Churchill, I think they're doing subtle resistance. If I look at page 7 under the underwork cases, it's clear to me that that's what's going on. And so they can blow us off as much as they want, but there needs to be repercussions if that's the case, especially as we're building a system, not just for one county. And I think we've bent over backwards with when we did the study 4 years ago and made sure that we got their input and didn't try to be heavy-handed regulatory wise, but I think we've been played. And I think we need to come up with something down the road that is a better makeup for a corrective action plan for the future. And then at some point, on the independence of the state public defender that we changed the statute last session, how many people do we have now? Do they all have criminal expertise at least?
And I can pitch that to the state public defender, or I can take that question.
Mr. Coates, you're still here? Yes.
I am. And my apologies. Would you please repeat that question?
Sure, Andrew. How many, because you got a little flexibility in the 2025 legislation, is everybody at least that's on board have criminal experience?
Excellent question. So far, yes. And I have chief deputies and deputies. So there are different levels of experience. Some people we've brought on have trial experience in, say, employment discrimination, and I brought them on because they have a passion about helping people. So I don't have inexperienced attorneys, I will say that. Trying to hire more, quote unquote, Cat A certified attorneys as well for the chief deputy positions to also mentor the deputies, trying to have more of a flow rather than, too top heavy or inexperienced attorneys, but I'm trying to, get people into the system or my office that have a passion and want to learn. So there we are.
Okay, and I get that, but I still think we need to make improvements in monetary issues and so forth in your office in the long run in order to staff it properly. I appreciate the passion because that can overcome some inadequacies, but in the long run, I think you want people with criminal experience first and foremost. So I don't want us to lose sight that that's still some work that we have to do legislatively this next time around. Thank you.
I very much appreciate that. So.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Hickman, Chris, you're good?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And my first question is sort of a shade of Chris G's question that, if acknowledging the state public defender's office is probably not in a space currently to be utilized in a corrective action. What, and this may not be a question to answer today, but maybe something that we've got to consider over time. But what is the corrective action tools are available for a corrective action without the state public defender sort of in that takeover capacity? And what does that framework look like? In a, sort of hypothetical now, it seems like we may need to answer that sooner rather than later pertaining to Nye County, but that would be a question I pose to the department. And then on Mr. Figler's point, on available data, is it easy to generate a report that shows investigator expert request grants and denials without providing that personal identifying information or any information related to the case, that just shows how many are coming in, how many are approved, how many are denied, and if for those denials, what's that summary explanation look like?
Yeah, and I can respond to both of those actually. And the first one, the typical option, I think, is a restructuring, right? It might be that instead of the county directly contracting with all these folks, they have to pick like a designee or something to then contract with public defenders and then give them a bucket of money to work with. Like Douglas County is kind of trying this out. I think Brian Filter, who's their council administrator, is here today. They created an agency. Effectively, it's not a public defender's office, but works kind of like we propose as the alternate public defender. So he has some autonomy within the county to then go out and hire experienced public defenders who are qualified with the department, and and that might be a mechanism to kind of change the way things are working because, as I said before, counties move slowly in some cases. Nye County is getting one or two attorneys here and there, doesn't get us to 12 when they need to be at 12, right? So it could be the case that kind of a model works more effectively because then it doesn't have to go through, every board of county commissioners meeting to get to a contract. Instead, it can just be kind of a direct contract scenario. And maybe that's a better option for some places. Again, Nye County, I don't know if there's a silver bullet for it, but it might work in other places that need to be in that corrective action space. Some places might have the
Madam
option.
Chair, it doesn't help either that Nye County has a lot of turnover in those positions that they are simply not able to control.
Right. And there is frequent turnover of attorneys working there for a variety of reasons. Some get better paying jobs elsewhere in the state because they're experienced, and other counties are recognizing that. Some decide they don't want to work with the county anymore or don't like the work environment, or it could be the workload is not tenable for them to continue with, especially at the rates of pay, right? So there are a variety of reasons for that. Other options, like I was saying, might be developing a plan for opening a county public defender's office if the county is then offering competitive salaries, benefits, those kinds of things that counties can. It might be an alternative to the NSPD taking over because they don't have the critical staff to really do that in a meaningful way. There are probably smaller counties that have better flexibility to do that in places where there might be union contracts with the district attorney's office or other employees. It might be more difficult for those counties to implement those kind of structures when they're looking for, pay scales that might not match what's actually bringing attorneys out to work public defense.
Right.
For the second one, I think we do keep a log of requests that are approved or denied, and we can almost certainly anonymize those. And if we're going to have a monthly standing meeting, we can go over those with one of you that's been anonymized to kind of discuss. Here are the reasons for however many it might be, and take a look at those logs and find either a better way of doing the evaluations that we are doing, or kind of discuss openly, like amongst each other, right? Like what we can do better in the system, and to kind of, if these fears are progressing and they're growing, to put them to rest or change the system to fix it so that they don't feel that way in the first place.
Okay, thank you. Other board members' thoughts? I know there's a lot of ideas here around potential concepts for helping to put a little bit of pressure in specific on NI, but other options to help state public defender, things like that. Do we want to, and I'll lean on our DAG, but do we want to attempt to accept, this is possible action, to accept this report? Is there a recommendation and a motion I know one of the things kicked around was to craft a letter or some sort of other corrective action proposal. I don't want to shut down discussion, but I do want to drive us towards some sort of a actionable thing that would be beneficial for our director.
Hey, Kate, this is Allison. I was waiting to talk about this issue before we move on, if you don't mind.
No, please do. Absolutely.
So I think at this point, we're talking about what we can do for the future. And I think Jared's suggestion of monthly meetings to look at contracts is an excellent one. What I'm worried about, though, is sometimes there are time limits that are not within the months of needing permission to do something. And I'm wondering if the committee is willing to take that on, or or somebody else would be willing to talk to the lawyer about what they need, and make sure that their needs, if they're available to us, can be met. I think the definitely staff needs help to make some of those decisions. And I didn't know, Peter, do you have an open position that we can have a criminal defense specialist come in? Because the thinking of all the other lawyers is very different from criminal defense. I mean, it's really a niche, and you do have to have a passion for it. You have to like people, and be very intuitive about what they need. I have heard that there are experts, lawyers, investigators that are very unhappy with what we're doing, and they are denying help for more of our cases. So I'm also wondering, if we're talking about planning for the future, is there a way that we could go back, and I would be willing to do this, and interview the experts and investigators, attorneys on your list, and just find out what they need to continue being a defender or an expert. They're hard to get, and I think maybe they just need some individual care at some point to really help feel like their mission is being met, and we do care about what they're doing. Sorry, it's a bit of several different things in there.
It's okay. Follow-up comments?
Yeah, I just say I think that's great. I have no problem, circling back with any of the attorneys that we work with that have questions or concerns. I'd say my phone always works and it's always on, but that wasn't true for about a month while we had a system outage. So, but it's back up and functional. So if you are hearing people that think they're not getting the relief they should, or they're not getting the help they need, like, please have them call me. We're both the complaint and the assistance department. Like, we're here to help public defenders do the best job they can.
We certainly can't fix what we don't know is broken. So I think everybody hears that message. So that'd be great. Okay.
Chair, if I may,
yes.
Just before we move on from this topic, and in terms of direction for the board, looking at the top of page 10, we have a recommendation from the monitor. The department should consider a corrective action plan for Nye County. Call in my time in the department or on the board where that has been placed in a monitor's report before. I'm also cognizant of the statutory scheme that the recommendation to enter into a corrective action should come from the department, specifically the oversight deputy director. And so, in order to make productive steps forward and I guess address some of the oversight concerns raised in in this in this report. I guess my question, and I'd like to throw out to the board to consider as a possible motion, do we need to provide direction to the department by the time of our next meeting to determine whether or not they're recommending a corrective action?
Chris?
Is there an oversight director that could answer our question?
Homa?
This is Homa Sayar. I'm happy to answer answer any questions that you have. Let me know where you'd like to start. I mean, I'm taking notes, but I don't know what what the pressing ones you'd like me to answer are.
Well, Jared was just talking. He definitely had a point about what you're doing. Can we know? So you're the person, Uma?
So specific to Nye County, I guess that was my question is like, are we asking generally related to the nexus of the monitor's report? Are we, I just wanted to try to make sure I'm answering clearly because it's Nye County. And I understand the public commenter had made, a remark that, I'm not a public defender. I haven't been a public defender. This actually kind of came up during the legislative session in regards to the boards and commissions reform. It's kind of the fundamental question of do we think that someone can oversee something if they don't have experience in that thing? So I understand that that's a concern. My background is in oversight and quality assurance. And so the way that with, for example, my Medicaid background, to Director Handy's point, if you escalate to a step that you have to be able to actually follow through on it. And I think the concern on corrective action with the county is then, they're already not complying. Does that, do we have the staff that could come in and assist? For example, if a medical facility is shut down because they're not complying with certain regulations, where do the patients go? That kind of thing. So the consideration that I've been trying to balance in these discussions, and we've been asked this by LCB as well, because we're under audit and, kind of sort of the soft corrective action plan, trying to bring people with us so that they understand that it's in their best interests. But at this point, I was making sure that I was observing and learning. I started in May so that I don't just jump in and start having opinions on things. And I've been talking to David Sheik. I've been talking to Derek Lopez about just kind of the unique issues in Nye. So no, we've talked about it, but we were in the balance saying it could do more harm than good, which was where we were at in corrective action.
So I'm assuming then if you're the director of this area that lawyers and investigators and experts statewide are having issues. I'm not specific to Nye County, and you don't have any criminal defense background. Is that what you're saying?
No, my ex-husband is a public defender, and I used to work on cases with him, or was a public defender. And so I also used to do habeas with him behind the scenes when he practiced at my firm, but not direct. Regarding obviously, I can't speak to who is saying what. I will say that one of the things that I've done since coming on board is I've been running legal server reports. And when you have attorneys possibly bill, I'm running reports and finding attorneys billing consistently 16 to 20-hour days. The question isn't whether I think that a certain amount of time is appropriate. I reach out to them and I say, hey, could you let me know, is this duplicative? Did this, is maybe somebody put some time from another case? So I found I have gotten a lot of vitriol from attorneys. Lots of all caps red responses saying this isn't any of your business. How dare you question me? And really, for our purposes, we're just looking to make the record show. So, for example, being audited by LCB, they are lay people, right? They're examining our records as lay people. Do we have the record to show that we verified what discovery did someone look at? So when someone says I looked at discovery for 4 hours, I've seen some 8 hours. Okay, I drove 8 hours to court. I was at court for 8 hours, and then I drove 8 hours back. I'm going to ask questions, and and I try to be as gentle as possible, saying, look, if you are working that kind of day, that's not healthy, right? That's not healthy to be working, but and I want to acknowledge, and I try to say, look, I acknowledge that those days happen. I've been in those days as in my career too. So the dialogues that I'm having are, can you tell me something more? It's not a straight up denial. And I have had some attorneys say, thank you for asking the question instead of just, cutting something. We had one attorney who had met with the client multiple times in the day about the same thing. And I said, hey, was this duplicative? Because the description was the same. Turned out the client had disabilities, and they verified with me via email. I have to talk to him twice to make sure he appreciates that. Awesome. Updated my notes, approved the cost. I don't handle the expert requests, but in my experience in terms of the office, people are being approved to get experts. But if an expert just says wrote a report and then next time says wrote a report again, if we didn't ask questions the first time, we have no way to verify whether the charge was again. So those are just stewardship issues that are fiscal, and I don't know that they relate specifically to the practice.
So when lots of my days, especially trial days, I billed for 14 to 16 hours. That's not really unusual at all. And so I feel like there's a disconnect between our contractors and kind of what you're talking about. So back to my offer, I really would like to talk to lawyers and experts and investigators who have been cut off. I understand, a couple of them are really very upset, and they've got lots of other work to do at a higher rate of pay with less questions asked. I just think it would be really important for us to have that communication. And with board members, I'm not getting a lot of communication. I'm happy to assist, help staff meet people. This is a very small state, and it's who you know. And I know I did get a lot of calls, from Marcy and prior staff saying, hey, I need to be introduced to this person. Can you introduce me? I'm sorry. I think staff needs more understanding of the criminal issues going forward. And I think if we look at some of the historical, just way people are feeling, we might be able to get there. I mean, we have lawyers and especially experts who are prima donnas, and they can be, because they do a great job. So I think there definitely is room to move, and I'm gonna volunteer. I'd be happy to help.
And the emails that I've been exchanging with these attorneys would be public record. I can redact anything that might be specific. I'm more than happy to provide that to the board so you can see the tone that I'm asking. I mean, if the board's direction is that the act of asking the question is causing offense, I mean, we have our obligations to discharge in terms of, what we're supposed to be looking at, what we've been directed to look at. So I have been working with Derek Lopez and David Sheik as far as, any introductions. Some of these attorneys are people I do know, but really, if I do explain, I'm trying to get you paid. That's my tone, is please let me help you get paid so that if we're audited, the audit doesn't come back and say the department was reckless and didn't actually verify. But I understand that that can make people feel challenged, and because they're not used to being looked at that way. And so, I mean, we could do a town hall. We could invite the attorneys to understand what it's like for us to look through a bill. But I understand they're busy. And regarding the 14 to 16-hour days, I'm not saying something is denied because of that, but we have actual rules that say we have to look at anything over 10 hours. And if I'm seeing somebody every day doing a 16-hour day, then they might not need to have another case assigned to them. So the goal is not to deny the bill, it's to have a dialogue with them and see if we can support them. And maybe they're spending time on something. We had an attorney who was spending a lot of time checking transcripts. So we secured an agreement to allow them to use our state rates on transcription services, push that out to all the attorneys. So now they can economically have a task done by someone else that they were doing. So we have been getting feedback about ways we can help. But I'm happy to take the feedback, and people are welcome to reach out. I can provide everything that attorneys have said directly to me. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. So Allison, if you don't mind passing along soliciting and then passing along any feedback, that would be really helpful. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kate.
Susan, you've had your hand up. Thank you. Hopefully you have some help for us here.
Thank you. And I just want to say, it is hard looking at bills and we do have to justify. And I feel you. I have these conversations a lot. I just want to talk about Nye County for a minute. I was happy with some of the reports I saw that David had. There's some attorneys that are new out there, contracts, doing great work. A lot of the monitors reports were really positive out there recently, the new ones that were done in August. I know there's less contract attorneys, which is a problem, but DITS has been contracting out the overload of work, so those attorneys aren't overwhelmed. And I think that's kind of like a corrective action where they're saying, we're not going to give all these cases that someone left to the new attorneys. We're going to spread them out and kind of monitor the case loads. And I've seen a lot of attorneys taking that aren't contracted, but doing as extra work, going out there doing these cases. And I think the quality representation has gone up over there. So I don't know. I know when this report came out, I'm not sure what the caseload looks like right now with the recent changes that have gone on out in Nye County.
And that was the direct question was, in light of this recommendation from the monitor, do we need to, and whether that's by motion or just direction at our next meeting, do we need to have an agenda item that focuses on whether or not a corrective action plan is recommended by the department?
I think that sounds great based on what's going on right now.
Susan, let me clarify. It sounds great to have it as a recommended item for the next agenda.
Yes.
And sort of stay the course and monitor right now and then make that decision point when we get back together in whenever it is, December. Our next meeting would be December 4th. Does that timing work?
Of course, that works for us if that works for the board. It's actually probably a good time because it is before the holidays, so we can start anything that needs to get in for February IFC or anything before January moving. It's only really 6-ish weeks from now, so I think that'd be an excellent time to circle back and have another set of eyes on this. And what we can do in the meantime is I can kind of set up, we're curious about what the numbers are. I can provide a better set of numbers, maybe do a presentation on what those numbers look like on the ground, get some insight from David Sheik, make sure he's here for the meeting to kind of give you both. Then you have the set of data that we're collecting, what we think we're seeing, David's actual observations on the ground. And if there's any other information, like if Professor Hanan makes her way out there again and can provide some other insight that maybe David doesn't see, right? We can have all of that available at one meeting, and then you can have, we can kind of give you what our thoughts are at the time, and then we're certainly interested in hearing what yours might be. And that way we can have a very detailed look at it and make a well-informed decision.
So Jared, do you want to make a motion along those lines so that we can give some clear direction on what we're looking for next time, which shows, I think, some progress for our monitor as well?
Mr. Weiss, does that need a motion, or is the direction specific? Is the directions sufficient?
Sufficient, yeah.
The direction to the director who will put that on the agenda for the next time is sufficient. No vote needs to be taken for that.
Excellent.
It will be
Any
added.
Go ahead, Jared or Peter.
I was going to say it will be added.
Thank you. All right. Any other discussion on item number 6, which is the Davis litigation update? Then
I'd like
because
to make a motion then to accept the report as prepared by Professor Anand, and also thank her for her extraordinary efforts here.
Remember,
Second.
Senior DAC Todd Weiss, you guys can take this vote, but it's not necessary. The report is a court document. It doesn't need to be voted to be accepted.
Oh,
Okay.
But it doesn't hurt anything. If you
Okay.
want to go through the motions, that's totally fine.
I'll stand by the motion then. I think
Okay.
it's important for that record to be made.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Any other discussion? Great. Then all of those board members in favor of moving forward and accept the report, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Great. Let's move on to item number 7, which is the Department of Indigent Defense Board updates. And we'll do, I think, Mr. Handy, you're going to take that one for us.
Maybe me again. Yeah, I'm going to back up a little bit to what we would have covered under 6B, just briefly about the amended consent judgment. I know we didn't spend a lot of time talking about this before. It was signed back in July. I just want to point out a few things. Sorry, my voice is being shut. It's been a long week for meetings. At the end of page 2, beginning of page 3, it talks about the conditions precedent to the extension actually occurring. And that included 2 things. The first was passage of some legislation that was passed during the session. The second is a submission to the Interim Finance Committee for some funding to help improve the NSPD's office. We've had a couple of work programs right now, or in the past Interim Finance meeting, which was this month. For the NSPD, the first one moved categorical funds from personnel to operating to pay for contracting with Mansfield Mayo in Humboldt County to provide services. Effectively, it's enough time, we hope, to cover the cases that they already had in the county through to completion. The other was to get funds moved from category 1 to category 4. Again, that's personnel. Sorry for the accountant lingo, I guess, to operating for the additional funding needed for renting the office space. It turns out finding a place to rent in a lot of these counties is not as easy as it seems. The public defender's office put in a lot of effort to try and secure a place that has sufficient space for all the attorneys they expect to have in the office staff, to have access and to enough floor space to be able to meet with their clients in the office, to have space to have meetings in the office. So that ended up costing a lot more than was budgeted. So we went and asked for that funding so that their lease that was month to month wouldn't expire before the end of the year. Obviously, we'll be asking that to be included in the next biennium's budget, but that's kind of a ways out at this point. Like I also said, we did provide just today have supplied GFO a request for IFC contingency funds. I'll get into this a little bit later in the weekend stipends. We've had some pushback from LCB for paying weekend stipends to NSPD employees specifically because those stipends weren't mentioned specifically in the pay bill. So after about a month of discussions, they did decide that we could make those payments. So those payments are being made. And back to the IFC request I'm making, put in today, is to have BOE recommend that IFC provide funding for travel stipends for NSPD employees. Those are the amount of, I think I had the amount of I'm forgetting the exact amount right now because I went through so many times. I think it's $865. It might be higher than that per week. We kind of came to that number as kind of being able to front the costs that they're fronting already right out of pocket to travel to places like Humboldt County or White Pine County. It turns out it's not cheap to travel to and stay in Humboldt County or White Pine County. And it does take a while for the state to reimburse you if you outlay funds. So it can certainly create a hardship on these attorneys to have to outlay those funds. And especially when you're, not able to stay at home every night or spend time with your family or your friends in the place you're living. So we're trying to offset that kind of dedication to working in the offices and better incentivize them spending time in those offices, meeting with their clients, having an opportunity to visit scenes of alleged incidents, things like that, more frequently than they already are through the stipend program. So Hopefully that gets approved by the BOE in November and gets placed on the IFC agenda for December. Right now, the monetary request is kind of low because there are only 5 attorneys in the office. We still put the request in, assuming that they'll be able to hire 3 more positions for the rest of the fiscal year. And it would be renewing the request if it is approved for the next fiscal year, and then hoping to build that into the budget. Or maybe the legislature will decide to actually modify compensation rates for state employees in a way that state public defender employees would be competitive with similar agencies in the next biennium. But this is really to try and get them compensated for all of that kind of lost personal time and help better attract and retain attorneys working in the office. The other things that I'd point out in the judgment were already mentioned. The amended consent judgment, page 3, talks about the extension of the deadline for meeting the workload standards to August 30th of 2026. And then at that time, if compliance is not reached, the parties would agree to confer on appropriate actions that could be undertaken at the upcoming 2027 legislature to address compliance. And like I said earlier, I'm treating that as a hard deadline rather than it being, something that that's just going to lead into the next session. I think we should really be acting rather than talking about what needs to
Oh, I know. I'm gonna go. No wonder Lauren lost her shit. Yeah, and
Can
her.
you
Imagine working with her.
Yeah, hi there. We have someone that's not on mute. John's iPad 2. Can you please mute
And
your?
she didn't want him to have his friend at the
I'm not
sentencing.
able to do that.
I am not as well. Casey is there.
Okay.
Have control if you could.
Thank you.
The third thing I wanted to bring up is on page 4, rolls on to page 5, and that's the executive director's role in monitoring cases, the NSPD. I sent a lot of documents that were uploaded to the materials, and it includes what I plan on reporting for this purpose. They all start with the number 14 because that's the report we're running in legal server. And what we're doing is I'm running each individual member of the office's caseload across the state, including contractors. So it's a very long list of case IDs. We've redacted the client names so that we're not just putting the client's name out there. Just to kind of show how many cases each of these persons has. We've also dropped those down in charts. They're kind of 1 page each. They look like this. And the highlighted values in each of those charts kind of shows where there's an attorney that already has over that 1392.6 hour of caseload already assigned. There's 2 versions of this. One is the total number of open cases assigned to those attorneys, and the second is the total number of open cases assigned that was opened in the last quarter. The workload study kind of anticipates that these workloads are based on annual rolling new cases, not just open cases. But I don't think we can also just say new cases in a vacuum is a good way to analyze an attorney's workload. So that's why we're going to be reporting both along with the charts. Some things that are immediately obvious. One of the lists of cases you can see has a lot of highlight on it. That's what we think are probably duplicate cases in legal server. So these are where it's usually a misdemeanor and a felony complaint have been simultaneously filed by the DA's office, but it's the same transaction or occurrence. And under our regulations, those should only be 1 legal server case. And under the workload, that should only be 1 case counted at the highest level of those 2 cases. So it's roughly 15.5% when I did the math in that report are duplicate cases. And that's why part of what we're going to be doing in the immediate future here is working with the NSPD and the contractors to better identify what is a case for legal server reporting purposes, making sure they're entering that correctly. And then is also probably obvious is that they need to close the cases so we can get an accurate count of open cases, not just open cases. And we've been through this before with Nye County. David Sheets done a lot of work there. But looking at the caseload in the Mansfield Mayo Law Office, there are literally hundreds of cases, many of which are over 2 years old, that are either likely closed, and if not, then we have some concerns as to why they're not closing, right, during that period of time, too. And it makes it so that we can't see whether their caseloads are appropriate to actually provide services to the NSPD under their contracts. If they have too much of a caseload in Lyon County or in existing cases in Humboldt County, they can't then help their clients if we're adding to those caseloads. So it looks like based on the last quarter new cases, that the number of cases that are being assigned to like Massey Mayo, for example, isn't unreasonable on its face, right? It looks like it comes to about 525 attorney hours worth of work for new cases that she's taken on in any of the counties where she's working. For Patrick Mansfield, it's much higher. I'm led to understand that part of that's because they have two other attorneys in the office who aren't being assigned the case in legal server, so they're not the primary assignment. And that's ending up some duplication. And the great majority, if not entirety of those cases are in Lyon County for Patrick Mansfield. And it's primarily Massey Mayo providing these services in Humboldt County for the NSPD. But clearly that's something that we need to flag, dig into, work with Patrick Mansfield, Massey Mayo to make sure the reporting is accurate. One of the other takeaways for me from this was that it seems like Justin Clouser's caseload's gone way up. That makes sense. He's taken a contract in Douglas County. It looks to me like it might be at the point where he shouldn't be covering cases for the NSPD at all, and the NSPD should probably be taking those back in-house. The majority of those are parole board hearing cases. That's something that Mr. Coates is here in Carson City and should be able to address himself if he doesn't have anyone else working in Carson City. So that would be kind of the immediate plan, again, is to make sure we're publishing these. And if you have any questions about these documents, please let me know, because they can be a lot to kind of read and understand. And I want to make sure that when we're reporting these, that the public understands what we're doing, that plaintiffs understand what we're doing, that the governor's office will understand what we're doing when we publish these, and when we come up with plans for correcting the issues that are pretty obvious here, that those also make sense to anyone who's reviewing these or reviewing this meeting. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Joni.
Yes, I have a question, Peter, about reporting. And I noticed from reading all the backups that there was an attorney in one of the counties that has a chronic problem with not reporting any hours at all. Is that something the board addresses, or is that something the county itself addresses through the contract process?
So I think the answer is yes to both, right? That's something that we're keeping an eye on. We work with the attorneys to let them know. And in the case of some places, like there was an attorney in Lincoln County that wasn't reporting any time, it's something the board has previously directed us to let the county know that they're not reporting time, right? Because again, the counties are also spending the money. And if we do want to exercise one of those hammers to not reimburse the counties because we can't see that they're reporting any time, like they should have the opportunity to address that with their contractors.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Sorry that I skipped over that for you, Mr. Handy.
No, no problem. I just wanted
I
to get
lumped
through
them all
that because it's a
together.
very important piece of
Yes.
this.
Thank you.
And how we'll be doing these going forward. So these reports will be published on a quarterly basis as required by the amended consent judgment. I'll also put together like a written plan of action based on this reporting, and that'll get published on our website as well as part of this. And like I was mentioning, part of that will be training in legal server for the contractors, for the NSPD employees, and recommending or instructing, depending on how things go, Andrew, to shift some of these case assignments around, because some of them are worrying right now, but not necessarily a problem, but could be a problem going forward if things aren't addressed.
All right.
Thanks. And then go on to number 7 at the chair's pleasure.
Please do.
Thank you. So a couple major issues. I already kind of talked a little bit about the weekend and holiday bail review hearing stipends. We had the issue with the continuing funds. LCB believed that we couldn't pay those because it was part of the weren't part of a pay bill. That seems to have been resolved, so those payments are starting to be processed. There was also a question in the beginning whether they would be PERS compensable again, because it wasn't in another session law. So there's a bit of back and forth with PERS. PERS eventually decided these are PERS compensable amounts. So counties are then having to pay a PERS contribution if they're paying these to their employees. We'll also be paying the PERS contributions for these stipends that are going to NSPD employees, which will help them out building, a larger pension with the state. We are having some issues with the counties. I'm going to be reaching out probably to NACO and setting up some workshops in the near future. A lot of counties are reporting they don't understand how the new method works. In the last biennium, we used to front all the cash to the counties, and then they would kind of spend it as they saw fit, and then report back whether, not even to us, report to LCB what they did with the funding and revert any funds as necessary. Since the funds are coming directly from our account, we can't work on that kind of a basis. We can't give funds directly to a county and then account backwards. So it's working on a reimbursement model. The counties, we've told how many stipends they can pay out for weekends, holidays to judges, prosecutors, and defense attorneys. Developed a form so they can fill out saying how many stipends they paid, and if they paid more than whatever the stipend amount was for the number of stipends, to indicate how much they've kind of overpaid. And in a sense, I want to capture the amount that they're paying for those PERS contributions and to kind of see if more funds need to be brought into the budget for the department to continue the program in future biennia. There have been a lot of questions from the counties about how the program works, whether they should be paying the stipends themselves, whether there's funds to reimburse it. And I think there's just maybe some confusion because the program's so different than it was 2 years ago. Essentially, though, the program is the county pays the stipends to the eligible persons, that's those judges, prosecutors, and defense attorneys, and then fills out the report and will provide a reimbursement to the county when they provide the report in the backup. So I hope it's straightforward. I hope with reaching out to NACO, I've been working a lot with Lander County and a few of the other counties who've had a lot of questions, try and get these out because I think it's good for everybody in the justice system that we have these 48-hour or bail review hearings as soon as possible. It's good for the state, it's good for defendants, it's good for the courts to make sure that justice is being served in a timely fashion and that people aren't languishing in jail just waiting for a bail review. So trying to work with the counties about that. Cybersecurity incident and defense effects on the department. So as you all likely already know, the state has a cybersecurity issue. We lost almost everything. We had no phones. We had no virtual shared drive where most of our files are stored. We were very limited on our ability to make payments within the state system. The state, because other agencies have similar problems, so payment systems were down for a period of time. Those are all back up and working as of right now. So we have phones, virtual storage, payment systems. We're able to get back into our virtual drive and make sure that everything's there. We didn't have any data loss so far as we can tell. As far as we've been advised, no information that we've collected was exfiltrated to third parties. So the information we keep confidential and privileged should remain that way. If I hear anything different, of course, I'll bring it to the board's attention because that's something we need to address as soon as possible, and then bring to attorney's attention as well so they can disclose as appropriate. Because that's a situation none of us want to be in. Due to part of that, like some of the things that we wanted to do were delayed. So attorneys might have been experiencing payment delays for post-conviction or prison payments. But luckily, most of our processes have been in paper. So for those like county bills, we've been continuously processing bills for claims to send to the counties so the counties continue to make payments for attorneys who are doing those appointed counsel work in the counties. Which is odd. I have a feeling that, we're the odd agency that still has a lot of paper functionality rather than this being like a digital process. And it's turned out to have worked relatively well that we've had a paper system that even if we move to a digital system in the future, we'll already have learned kind of a backup method in the event something like this happens again. So we've also implemented some different policies regarding, we receive a lot of data, a lot of it comes in attachments or in links. So we've tried to implement some more security policies to make sure that what we're accessing is safe, that it's from an original sender. We told people for a while, you might get a phone call from us if you send, a claim in or something, if it looks suspicious, just to make sure that it's you and that you sent it. We're hoping to try and come up with some naming conventions to try and make it more uniform so that we can speed up the process and make it so that it's clear to us that items are coming directly from the people are supposed to be coming from and not from some bad actor. I don't think it's going to create any slowdowns in our processes going forward. It's just there's some time for internal training and making sure that we have those in effect so that we don't have another situation where we're the subject of some kind of scam or a phishing problem. I don't want our agency to be the root of a cybersecurity incident. I'll let that be somebody else to the extent I can. For item C, hiring for positions, um, due to both the state kind of cybersecurity incident and due to the shutdown it's a blackout period for payroll, the state's doing a lot of changeover in its internal software structures, so it's delayed being able to hire for those positions. We should be able to hopefully in the next couple of weeks start getting those posted for the AA2 and ASO1. The AA2 would still be providing that administrative support that we'd expect. And the ASO, I think, is going to be an integral part of the team, being able to work kind of leading the fiscal folks we have in-house, working with the administrative services division, making sure our budgets are kept and clean, and providing some support to our MAs in the office who are doing the work already. And that includes, the initial review of claims from attorneys, investigators and experts, reviews of the quarterly reports that we receive from the counties. So we have another set of eyes in the system, somebody who has a lot of experience in this area and who can lead the team effectively. It should hopefully increase the quality of services we're delivering, and just having extra hands will, I think, expedite a lot of the things that we're doing here. The last one's new forms, guidelines, policies, and procedures. We've talked about this a few times where we're developing policies and guidelines regarding things like attorney billing, investigator and expert billing. We've talked about it several times in the call. We really want to be able to workshop these with you. We want to try and workshop these with practitioners, with experts and investigators to make sure that these are things that are, reasonable and sets a standard that both comports with the kind of things we need to show for spending state money on the internal side, and also allows attorneys the most flexibility to get the services they need from these investigators and experts. So we're looking forward to hopefully pretty soon having those conversations with those of you who've already practiced in the area and are investigators and experts in the field, trying to get those to be in a place where they're ready to roll out in a way that hopefully makes the process more seamless for everybody, so that we can get as fast as we can from receiving a claim to payment of those claims. I'll just mention, I guess, briefly that there are some new forms that we've been utilizing. In part, it's because we've had a lot of feedback from the counties where they require certain items in the forms that weren't extant before or in the forms before. Some of it is making it easier to use. So it's like fillable PDF. You can type in the number of hours you're doing it and the amount of your hourly rate, and it pre-populates the amount of the cash value for the claim in the form. So we're trying to simplify it. We've also created forms for a few different things because the payment sources are different. So for prison claims, for post-conviction claims, and for just selected counsel claims, they're going to be different forms. And that's because they're getting paid from different places. It's one of those things where if you were added to the list today, it would probably be an overwhelming kind of thing to try and latch onto. But, we're very, again, open to explaining how that works. If anyone has any questions, if you hear of any attorneys saying they have issues with forms, please direct them to us. We're happy to help them understand the forms, help better fill out the forms. Our staff spends a lot of time working with attorneys already, trying to make sure they understand the new processes and the new forms. And as always, it's just kind of hopefully we won't be changing these as frequently in the future as we have over the last couple of years. Because so I certainly understand, we certainly understand that anytime we change a form, it's a pain for everybody involved to try and learn it, get it right, for us to be able to go through it, a new procedure. So hopefully these will stick and we won't have to do this again for a while. And that's really all I have for discussion for the items that I've listed. If you have any questions about any of those, or if you have any questions really for me for any of these updates or any other update, please feel free. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So I'd like to take that and run with it a little bit. On 7D, when you're talking about new forms, guidelines, policies, and procedures, I always think it's a good idea to go back to where we primarily started from. And I look at the vision, the mission, and the goals, and I feel like we're not fully implementing those. The goals of DIDS, and let me read a part of it quickly. The goals of DIDS are to build a strong and resilient statewide network of effective indigent defense providers and to support them with regular education, training, other defense specific resources, including experts, investigators, social workers, and other valuable tools. Our position has always been we want to provide holistic defense services. And I think that we're trying to do more patchwork than to actually, provide a holistic approach. So a couple of things. Let me just kind of run through my list, Peter, and if there's anything that you want to talk about, please do, or anybody else. I'd like the board and staff to commit that the next hire for DIS is a criminal defense expert. You don't know what you don't know, and we need to have. I think we need to have more interaction. The board needs to have more interaction with the staff, and if there's something you need, please ask. This board is for oversight. I don't want to come to a meeting every 3 months or sooner and just learn a bunch of stuff or have everything dropped on me the week before. I think that I want to be an active member on this board. I don't know if others agree with that. And so when we're talking about the issue of complaints by contractors, you have a couple of offers here. Jared brought up the meetings with those of us who are specialized in this area to especially work on billing, but they could work on some other issues too. And I've offered to help Homa with the billing and what she's doing. And I'm sorry, I feel like there's pushback against. Oh no, don't worry, I can do all of it. I don't need anything. I'm sorry, you do. And as board members, I think we're required to give that information and support. You may have, like with Nye County, the board, if we knew more specifics, we might be able to offer out of the box help to you. And that would be from some of the experts like Joni who have been in the Nye County area and have been committed so much to Nye County. Again, we know people, I'm sure you guys do too, but we can help and do more. And I think in this time when so many people are arrested, I mean, we haven't had ICE here yet, but when people are accused of crimes, there's absolutely nothing to support the criminal action. Those are the kinds of things that we may be facing pretty soon. So I just think we're all a little too kind of waiting to see what the other people want and not jumping in. So I'd like to be one of those people who jumps in and helps support and trains. And finally, speaking of training, aren't the board, aren't all of us supposed to have monthly training? The lawyers, I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Joffrey. if I might, just a real quick point. In preparation for this meeting, I was talking to Director Handy and asked him about the level of involvement that the board, and his comment to me, and I will quote, was, "It's always good to have an active board." So um, I think there's some openness to that, if is because that serving on as many boards as we all do, I think we've heard it every way from just stay out of our way board members to tell us how to step forward, do every step board members, and I think somewhere in the middle lies the answer. So I appreciate the offer to help as well. And Mr. Handy, if you want to say anything about that, you can. If not,
Yeah, no, apparently I've already said it before, but um, I'm well aware, right, that like I don't know everything. And that's part of, I think, this board's function is even if I were an experienced criminal defense attorney, I still wouldn't know everything. And the board has a lot of combined wisdom from decades of experience in whatever you've been doing that we need to be able to lean on to get things right, right? To make sure that we're doing the best thing we can for indigent defendants in the state of Nevada. So as much activity as I can get from each and every one of you, I would love to have. So I'm really glad that you're like willing to step up and jump on. So I hope to be talking with you very soon about a lot of things we do. I'm going to make you give us more advice than just on billing too, because I know what your background is, and I know you know a lot about what we do, the history of this department, the history of criminal defense in Nevada. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you, Peter.
all right. Any other board comments on item number 7, which is our update from the department and then updates for the board? All right. Seeing none, it appears, Mr. Weiss, that we don't need it. This is for possible action. I heard suggestions. I didn't hear anything that might trigger a motion.
Correct. As long as there's no board action being proposed, then there's no vote needs to be taken.
Okay. Then if we're comfortable as a board, let's move on to our Nevada State Public Defender status and update on the Humboldt County offices. Mr. Coates, I think you're on. There's Andrew. Yes, you're muted.
My apologies. Can you hear me now? All right. Well, since we last met, we've opened up an office in Winnemucca, Humboldt County. And in terms of the caseload, it's been going relatively smoothly. The court is happy. There are challenges, but that's more the DA's office and not on our end, which the court has actually explicitly told us. So there's that. I think Peter touched on this a bit, but there's only one office available in Winnemucca. So we will be requesting extra funds for that. In terms of recruitment and retention, I'm always hiring. I'm always recruiting. So I go to Las Vegas quite a bit to meet with attorneys and meet with law students to try to get people to come on board. We have 3 open positions for Winnemucca, Humboldt County, and 1 to 2 for White Pine. Let's see. And that's pretty much it. So I'll just open it up for questions if anyone has any questions.
Questions for our state public defender board members?
Oh, I will also add that we are taking on pardons board cases. So we have 3 coming up in December.
Okay, thank you.
Here, if I may, the recommendation in the monitor's report, discusses building up the state public defender through incentivized recruitment and retention efforts. I understand the outreach and always hiring, going to Las Vegas and looking for potential candidates. But from the department's perspective and the state public defender's perspective, is there any effort or any work program to I want to latch onto the word that the monitor used, incentivize recruitment, or are there any thoughts that would I understand the pay band is not where it should be, but are we exploring any other options that may help us get around that?
Well, excellent question. Thank you. We are, is the short answer. and that may be from rural communities out of state. So looking into that, I have been focused on opening the Humboldt County office, but now that that's been pretty smooth so far, I can now turn my attention to recruiting from other states. I'd like to keep it local, but if we can't get people in Ely, I will go to Idaho and Utah and anywhere else I need to go.
So, Mr. Coates, it was earlier in the pandemic before the county did an overall study of our salaries and adjusted accordingly, but we offered we called them signing bonuses. I'd be happy to connect you with our folks. If it's not PERS compensable, it was it was a helpful tool. I think I am not those offices, but I'd be happy to connect you if you think that's a value.
I think it would be. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other comments?
Well, it's even like, covering moving expenses, right? If we are looking out of state, might be something that may be available under some circumstances and might be helpful as an incentive.
Great. Whatever we can do to assist.
Thank you.
Any other board members with questions or comments for Mr. Coates? I think we're wearing everybody down. All right, let's move on to number 9, the oversight update. I think Homa, you're going to give that for us.
Thank you, Homa Slayer, for the record. We have Derek Lopez and then also David Cheek on the call as well, and I believe they had prepared some remarks. I don't know what the chair's preference is to have them speak first and then, and then talk about kind of the follow-up we've done, or whatever your preference is in terms of setting the stage for, there were obviously in the reports, I had done a summary report that had flagged kind of the hot spots and then opted not to, submit it because I wanted to give them an opportunity to sort of talk about the and then versus me indicating where we were at. So whatever your preference is.
Great. Thank you. Why don't we hear from them? I see Mr. Lopez is on and unmuted.
So I'm not muted. Okay. I've got primarily the five counties in northern Nevada, Elko, Lander, Pershing, Douglas. I might be missing one. Lander, Pershing, Humboldt. And of those, the attorneys that I'm watching, there are a couple attorneys out of Elko that are a little bit concerning. I don't want to name names at this point, but doing some follow-up with regard to the situation with regard to those couple attorneys. The others all seem to be having their heart in the right place. They're working hard for their clients. Some are newer than others. Elko has some young people. And I don't mean young in age, but young in experience. And Humboldt has someone who is new to criminal defense, but is an experienced attorney. And they appear to be learning fast and working hard. And I think we've got some hope that they're going to be very good defense attorneys. So the concern really is filling positions. So Elko has lost their public defender. He left in July. And I know that they've been trying to fill that position, and they've got an interim public defender running the office who has a lot of experience. But it is difficult filling those positions, and incentives, just like for the state public defender, incentives for those rural counties really could make a difference. And I know that money doesn't solve problems, but money can encourage people to come. And I've heard with some of the young people that they're leaving with such large student loan debt that these salaries just are not something they can consider. So without loan forgiveness or without something to make it more financially attractive, it is going to be hard to get young people, I think, into the criminal defense field. And I think a big part of the difficulty with these counties is getting people to join the public defender's office. And I'm not sure what the solution to that is other than incentives, financial incentives. With Humboldt County, I know Andrew's working very, very hard on that, and he does, I think, have two good attorneys for that office. But the progress, and has nothing to do with the State Public Defender's Office or Andrew or anybody there, but the progress seems to be slow. I've seen the office a couple times now from the outside, and it looks very nice. I mean, I don't know what it looks like on the inside because it's not open. And I know they're waiting on IT, and I know IT's been very busy. But I don't know how that works on morale of employees when they're using their own paper and asking to be reimbursed, using their own printers because they don't have an office, they don't have printers in the office, or if they do, they don't have access to them. So I don't know. They may be very happy working at home. This might be a great thing, and they're not in any hurry to have that office open. It just worries me that they don't have that office, and I don't know when it actually will be available for their use. But it looks from the outside like it would be a really nice office to work in, and I think Andrew did a really good job in securing that. And I know Humboldt is limited. Their hotel rates over the summer jumped from where they would honor the 110 government rate to $405 at some point per night. And they've got a big mining boom. And those hotels are full. And because they're full, they're either not offering the government rate or they're viewing the government rate at $285 or something far above what the state wants to reimburse. So I'm not sure exactly how the NSPD's attorney or attorneys that are coming in from, I think she's coming in from Vegas, if she's having any trouble getting that reasonable rates or reimbursed, but they're busy. There's not a lot of space. And so I think Andrew's done a great job in securing what looks like such a nice building for his office, and just hopeful that they'll get in soon. In terms of the attorneys, the contract with Mansfield and Mayo, I've had a chance, to watch Massey Mayo a number of times. I know that at least in the beginning, she did not have the qualifications to do the high B or the A. But watching her, she does an excellent job. And her caseload at times on particular court hearings would be large, but it was very clear she knew every client, she knew their cases. She was working from memory more so than notes, and right on point. So I was very impressed with the effort that she was putting in and the quality of work that she was doing. But I don't know what her caseload is in Lyon County because I haven't been watching Lyon County until very recently. And the very recent, I didn't see her there, so I don't know if Mansfield is covering that or what. But with the counties that John Cadlich was watching, the only one I've been to so far is Lyon County, and I've only been there once for each district court and twice for the justice court. And so I haven't seen a whole lot yet. And I really not in a position to form an opinion as to how well that's going. But Lander County has an experienced attorney. They're not high volume, and they do have a contract with another attorney for conflict. So that seems to be going smoothly, and in large part because it's not high volume. They recently lost their district judge. He passed away. So there's going to be a lot of visiting judges, district judges, until that position gets filled. That is also the judge for Mineral County and Pershing County. So there will be a lot of different judges appearing. With Pershing County, they have a public defender who's very experienced. I think he's been there at least 17 years, seems to do a very good job. They had a contract with conflict counsel, and that attorney ended his contract. And from what I understand, the primary reason he ended it is in his view, it wasn't worth the money they were paying. It was too much work for the money. So that being part of the reason, maybe not the only reason. So I don't know if they filled that. I don't know if they're looking simply to DIDS to use hourly attorneys until they do have somebody else under contract to do conflict work. But the defense attorney, the primary one, seems to be doing a very good job. And that previous conflict counsel was doing a good job from what I could see, also had a great deal of experience. So those two smaller counties appear to be going well. Humboldt is in transition, but my hopes are high. I think the attorneys are meaning to do a good job, putting in the effort to do a good job, and it's just the transition period right now. Elko, again, I think they're doing a good job. They are down. They lost two. One of them left September 10 and has actually joined the firm of Mansfield Mayo to assist with Lyon County coverage. They were able to replace one attorney in Elko at the public defender's office who came over from the district attorney's office. I have not yet seen him in court, even though I've been out there a few times since he's joined the office. So I'm not sure timing wise if I'm just missing him, but he also has experience. I'm not sure how much, but some criminal prosecution experience at least. But if there's any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. My concerns related to two attorneys, I really don't want to name their names, but looking into that.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Ms. Giuliani has her hand raised. Christy, you want to?
Yeah, thank you. The loan forgiveness piqued my interest because Marcy and I talked about that several years ago. I think Nevada has a justice program called Forgiveness for Eligible Full-Time Prosecutors and public defenders, but I don't know if that forgiveness only means if you went to school here and it's not from another state. But we might want to take a look to see if it's called the JRJ program and see if there's restrictions, but maybe that might be a place to go to not only forgive, but to provide funding to pay off a loan. I think that that's an excellent idea and could help. Secondarily, let me find my notes here. Well, I forgot now. I'm getting old, so we'll just leave it with that.
I think Dave Mandela, you might have something to say. Did you?
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair, to Mr. Lopez and the rest of the board. So in Humboldt County, you mentioned the issue of high cost of hotel rooms and the like. That's going to end very soon here. Lithium Nevada has just opened up their workforce hub here, and they are now transferring a lot of the people that are using those hotel rooms and are on per diem with the mine and Bechtel Corporation are now moving in. So I think they said they'll be up to about 400 by early December, which means they're going to be able to move pretty much their entire current workforce. That's going to be more like 1,900 here next year. But in any case, that should improve that. And I think the other challenge for especially young, well, any age attorney trying to move into this area, the home costs are massive. So they're very expensive. They're much like Reno or maybe even higher in some cases, and mainly because the inventory is very small. A lot of homes being built right now, but they're way behind. So that will improve as well over time. That will help with recruiting.
Thank you. That's really helpful information.
If I
Jared,
could
you have
just-
your hand up?
Oh.
Oh, sorry. And then Derek will let you go. And then Joe, I see you're waving at me somehow. So let's start with Jared and then we'll. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Just I had two quick questions. One of them, I guess, pertains to another comment from the monitor's report about the department comprehensive oversight reports. I found those to be useful in the past because it really summarized all the different reports from the oversight attorneys, Mr. Lopez, Mr. Sheik, and understanding that there has been transition in the department. I'm not trying to, I guess, assign blame or anything, but I'd just like to know if the department plans on continuing those because I think they're very useful in the board's oversight function. And then I guess to follow up, I probably spent way too much time last night looking at Mr. Lopez's and Mr. Sheik's reports, but just one of Mr. Lopez's comments triggered something. There was an issue in his reports where a judge had made specific critique regarding an attorney. And I think that is borne out also in the monitor's report as well. And this may be more adequately addressed in the training section, but in light of those consistent reports, I was just curious as to the department's efforts to provide training for that individual.
Madam Chair, I don't know if you want me to answer or if you prefer
Thank
the
you.
director to answer, whatever your preference is.
I'll let you guys duke it out.
I'll take it. Why not? So yeah, we identified this a little bit earlier than last night, luckily. What we did is our typical process of, we make it a priority for Mr. Lopez to review. We want to get a more broad understanding to see if this is an ongoing problem, not like a one-time problem, because this could be a potentially a very major problem, right? If this attorney's doing this consistently across multiple clients or it's a continuing pattern. We take judges' concerns very seriously. It was referred from, it's quasi-formal, right? From Derek and Homa to Brenda to look at to see if this is a training issue for both this particular attorney and if it's happening elsewhere for our entire attorney list. So it's going to come up a little bit in the upcoming kind of training discussion. I'll just preview like our next annual training is going to be focused on technology and use in both defense and in kind of practice and what's out there being used by the prosecution. But we're certainly, if this is not a one-time problem that hasn't already been rectified because we haven't seen what the responsive materials might be yet, and maybe this attorney's already taken actions to fix the problem. Whether this person needs to be directed to some particular training themselves, right? And we can either track that down or an existing provider and say, hey, take this class from NAPD or NACDL or whoever it might be, right? So that you don't have this same problem going forward, or it's going to be something that we can put together because if it's something we can't put together, I think we could. I think it's fairly straightforward problem to fix, personally. But if it's something that's happening across the board, then it's something we'll add to the curriculum for the annual conference to make sure we have, if not, sooner by way of like a different separate online training. I'll let Brenda talk a bit more about the trainings that are coming up kind of in that vein, but like I said, it does kind of follow the process of we've recognized a problem. It clearly could be a training issue rather than a competency issue. So it got referred by Homeland Derek to Brenda to kind of see if this particular person needs train, what materials are out there, and whether we need to have a more broad training. And that's, I think, the typical process we follow when we spot these kind of problems. Hope that answers your question.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Krim, I know you have been patiently waiting. Thank you.
That's okay. I just had a follow-up to what Mr. Lopez said, that we did lose our conflict attorney. It didn't help that he was driving from Winnemucca back and forth, so that part of it didn't help at all. And we are currently actively engaged in trying to find a replacement, so hopefully that'll work out. But there's not a lot of people who want to work in Lovelock, having said that. And I think that is going to rear its ugly little head when they try to find the replacement judge also. That was it.
Okay. Thank you.
And I believe one of the questions from the board member was about like summary data. In the last meeting, we received a request from, I believe it was Mr. Fiegler, about how are we going, how to take this voluminous data and make it into something meaningful. And so obviously understanding that, the criminal law is not my area, but looking at it from like a data analytics, like how do we apples to apples look at it, because we've had questions from Mr. Lopez and Mr. Sheik about like, well, our reporting is different even among each other. What are the priorities? What things should we be doing? And we actually had the opportunity to look at what we were going to beta test is moving the report into an Excel format that they can fill out during the hearings, because I feel like there's a lot of time spent on questions that maybe don't apply, and then have it so that we're not putting data in there that's sort of, I don't know if you've looked with the reporting, it's just repetitive or doesn't apply, but actually have it guide anyone observing through the questions that are applicable, right? If it's an arraignment, the questions may guide them differently from a sentencing. And then do a little less open-ended questioning on certain things that would be more benchmarking. The goal is compliance through simplicity, so that the idea would be to create a data dashboard that would be on the DIDS website that any board member or any member of the public could at any time see, even the most recent, because I believe there was a concern of, okay, you convene every X amount of time. That's a lot to process. So you could actually then see in real time kind of what the trends are in terms of preparedness. One thing too, I believe Director Handy mentioned the paper processing. One of the goals to make things easier for attorneys would be we need to get to a point where their hours generate their invoices. They don't have to go and take those hours and put them somewhere else, right? Those extra steps that feel bureaucratic and don't actually serve the goal of tracking the data about their time and what they're spending, and then truing up the observations. So when I see the observations from the reports going into the legal server data, and I believe the monitor had mentioned about how much time is really being spent. So we could actually, with the dashboard, get to the point where we say, okay, this person was flagged as effective. This is about how much time they spent or how many times they met with their client, to make that case for we really need even more for folks because they are running ragged or running things. So my goal was to not just sort of like distill what maybe I thought was important, because obviously the board may want to look at other things. But if you have a dynamic dashboard, you could go in and say, hey, I'm really worried about this particular issue or county. And to the point of, for example, the attorney that was referred, it's a common issue across all legal practices right now. The use of ChatGPT possibly to generate briefing. It's kind of the only reasonable explanation for the kinds of citations we're seeing where it's not even a case doesn't exist, and it's a shame. But if someone's being pushed to that because of other factors, we want to be sensitive to that. And I also wanted to mention we had gone forward with contracting for the mentorship role out in NIE, and we have had attorneys back out because they don't know if it's conducive to mentorship that they would be possibly, through reporting to the state, outing people as being works in process, right? People have to learn somewhere. And so they don't want to say, oh, I'm mentoring so-and-so on this issue, and then create this lasting record that, oh, this person's having a problem or whatever, right? Because we're people too, attorneys are people too. So it's kind of trying to, I think a dashboard would give you the overall trends. Then we could dig into the actual reports that we're seeing and maybe anonymize it. One of the compromises we offered to that firm that was going to do mentoring was to do some anonymizing. So yes, you could go get the key, but it would be an extra step. So Google isn't crawling for these attorneys' names and then highlighting maybe a bad day that they had or a bad circumstance where they didn't know they had a hearing. So the goal is to do summarizing and, give you tools for that. I know Mr. Lopez had an illness during this period of time. We were just trying to juggle also, the return of Mr. Sheik and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to highlight that we want to do the transparency and reporting, but not at the expense of crowding attorneys out who feel that they're being judged in some way instead of help to grow. So that's kind of where I'm at on, but the goal is to do summarized reporting.
Great.
Yeah, if I could just kind of trail off of that. At the last meeting, David Figler brought up, oh, he's still here. David brought up, like, how are you synthesizing all of this data, right? We had hundreds of reports. I think we had over 1,000 reports over the course of a year. Even a person doing this full time can't read all of those. So what we're looking at when we're talking about addressing these observation forms is changing them to that Excel kind of format so that then we can see clear trends, right? It's a more numbers based system than did this person appear? Yes, no. Like, that's important, but like, did they appear prepared as yes, no? Like, instead it might be how prepared did they appear from a scale of 1 to 5 on that day, kind of a thing, right? So if Derek and David look in different places, see the same attorney, and the trend is that they have an average of like a 2, they don't look that prepared. We can see that as a trend data. It's hard to do it absent pulling all of the individual reports for one attorney, manually, effectively, to try and see if there's a trend of this attorney not performing adequately in a particular area. So that's kind of the goal at this. I don't think it replaces the narrative format that they provide information to us, because we still get those monthly reports or the summary reports from David and from Derek. This would just be a better way to synthesize the data when we can't read 750 observations independently and and really identify those trends, because it could be that somebody had a bad day, but they flagged a 1 on this day and we couldn't figure out why. And we can take a look at that, but see that the trend is no, they're always prepared. And it was one day that they weren't prepared. Maybe it wasn't actually an issue with, some of the other more systemic issues. It's not a caseload issue. It's not a workload issue. It's not a travel issue. It's this day something came up, whatever that might be. They just got the case that morning, or their client got picked up and the court called the case on the calendar and they didn't have the file that day, kind of thing happens frequently. And it's hard to be prepared when those circumstances come up. And it might not be immediately obvious to David or Derek when they're sitting in court that day that that's what happened, but we can identify that by flagging that and then saying that, oh, it turns out that generally this person is well prepared most of the time. Does that kind of make sense?
Thank you. Yeah, and that sort of goes into the second item in this oversight report when you're talking about the synthesis and the analysis of the data. So we can go into that more as well. But I do want to hear from David to see. I know we were wanted to hear from both of the attending outreach advisors. So David, do you want to, or unless you guys want to go down the road more on the outreach or I'm sorry, the synthesis of the data. All right. Mr.
I
Sheik,
saw
take it
him on
away.
the meeting. I'm trying to see if he's
He's here.
still.
I can see
Okay,
him.
there you go. Oh, there.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
So I have 5 counties. I have the 7th and the 5th judicial district, and with the board's permission, I'll save Nye County for last. Eureka County, our contracted public defender, Kelly Brown, has given notice he's retiring effective the end of December. We've been in discussions with Jane Eberhardy, who has a contract in White Pine at this time to pick up Kelly's contract. That contract is for 0.3 full-time employee, so it's not a full-time contract. Eureka has a limited number of cases, and I've talked with the district attorney and been working with him on getting this matter before the board. It came before the Board of County Commissioners on Tuesday of this week, and they passed it till November 4th, looking to see if anyone else is going to put in a request for consideration for the position. I really don't expect that to happen, and that Jane will be able to pick up the Eureka contract. Eureka closed their jail a year and a half ago and haven't reopened it. There's still issues involving transport of inmates from either Lander County or White Pine County for hearings in Eureka. There is still a push, especially from the district attorney is assisting with this, to try to get them to reopen the jail or at least man it to some extent. That continues to be a work in progress. White Pine County, we have the state public defender servicing the majority of those cases. Jane Eberhardy has a contract to pick up any conflict cases and additional caseload from the state public defender. The state public defender, and Andrew will correct me if I misstate this, but they basically have 2 full-time attorneys based in Las Vegas that are sharing the White Pine duties on a week-to-week basis. Robert Melsick is a new attorney out there. I met with him. I met with the judges. The judges are pleased with his performance. He seems to be adapting very well to Ely. The other is Derek Penny. Derek's been doing this for a year and a half at least now. He has become very knowledgeable about White Pine County and the needs of the courts there. We have had a recent report from the district attorney on a particular motion that we'll be looking into. I don't foresee that to be a real issue, as opposed to basically the district attorney's office is down to two actual courtroom attorneys now, and they're having real manpower problems, the same as the public defenders are. But it appears that the caseload is covered in White Pine County with Jane and the public defenders and appointing hourly conflict attorneys. If Jane does pick up the Eureka contract,
we would be monitoring her caseload to be sure she's not overworking herself with the White Pine County cases, which is in excess of a full FTE contract. So we may be reducing the number of cases Jane takes in White Pine County in order to allow her to pick up the Eureka cases. Um, the other seventh judicial district is Lincoln County, and I'm having no issues in Lincoln County. We have uh, two very competent attorneys that are handled that. Franklin Katchke and Shane Manueli share that contract, and the judges are extremely pleased with them. They've been doing it now since I started, and there was a short period of time where apparently they weren't inputting their time into legal server, so it appears they weren't doing anything. I believe that situation's been corrected. I have not pulled the legal server data for either Eureka or Lincoln County to take a look at that, but that's something I'll be doing in the future. Over in the Fifth Judicial District Court, excuse me, going back to Lincoln County, we do have a new district attorney there. Dylan Frainer, who was district attorney in Lincoln County, took the Seventh Judicial District Court bench in place of retiring Judge Fairman. And so April Bradshaw is the new DA in Lincoln County, and she's overworked as the other DAs are apparently. Um, but she is fitting in very well there. She was familiar with Lincoln County already from the grant position she had with White Pine County. Um, Esmeralda County, there are no caseload problems in Esmeralda County. Jason Ernest has a contract with Esmeralda to provide all of their public defender services. They do have a capital murder case that's pending there, where attorneys out of Las Vegas, Clark Patrick, has been appointed as first chair, with Jason Ernest doing second chair on that. The district court judges in the Fifth Judicial District have either recused themselves or not taken on the capital case. And Justice Cherry is stepping in as a senior judge to hear that capital case. Whether or not he's actually going to hear it in Goldfield, or whether or not he will hear it someplace else, is still to be determined. Venue is an issue in that case due to the small population in Esmeralda County, and the victim being a well-known person may be difficult to impanel a jury there. But that case is proceeding on. With regard to the other county, um, there's been a lot of talk about Nye County, and I think it's a very good idea that we're going to wait until December to consider whether or not a corrective action is needed. Um, since I've returned from my time off, I've again undertaken the task of looking at the caseload numbers and whether or not they're accurate, or whether or not there's a number of cases that should be closed that aren't being closed. And just to illustrate that, when I took this position back in February, and then had a report run in March of 2024, there were 3,275 open cases in Nye County, spread between basically 6 contract attorneys and a number of court-appointed attorneys. That figure to me seemed extremely unrealistic and inaccurate, and I had undertaken at considerable time expense to pull those, to have a report run to showing the cases initially that were over 300 days old, to identify those cases and why they were still open. And then more recently, I've had Stan run a report showing all the open cases in Nye County. And I can report from the 3,275 that we showed in 2024, I'm now down to 873 open cases. Um, and from that 873 cases, I can report that within the last week and a half, we've closed another 150 cases that were on the books that should have been closed. We've increased the number of attorneys to 8, out in Nye County now. We have, at this point in time, 187 cases that are assigned to hourly contract attorneys. So if we take the figures that I'm showing, this is just very preliminarily, we're down to just above 500 cases that are open, spread between the 8 attorneys. That number is still probably too high, and it's going to take some time to look at some additional information about those cases. For instance, how many of those are misdemeanor cases where there's a 2-year stay out of trouble order in place, that the case remains open because there's a status date set in 6 months, and considering whether or not those cases needed to be considered as active open cases or cases that we can technically close as not being cases contributing to the caseload of the attorneys. All of those things we're looking at now, and by December, I expect we'll be able to report that the numbers are much closer to meeting caseload standards than we thought all along. The attorneys, and I hate to be critical of attorneys, being being one in the past and knowing how hard it is to allocate your time for administrative tasks, such as entering information into JustAware as to the disposition of the case, and the case can be closed, entering your time into Legal Server. The attorneys need to be schooled and educated on how to use Legal Server correctly. Just today, or actually yesterday, I had identified a case that I thought should be closed, and had reached out to the attorney and asked why the case was still open, and was told, well, that case is closed, but I don't know how to close it in Legal Server. That's a problem. When the case is closed, it should be closed in Legal Server, and it shouldn't fall on DIDS, and it shouldn't fall on Derek and I to go into Legal Server and close cases for the attorneys. They need to be trained and learn to allocate their time to do that. And that's a function of caseload also. If you've got 100 cases, you don't have time to be doing entries in Legal Server on a regular basis. So that's where we stand on caseloads. I'm finding, as Peter referenced earlier, there are cases that are duplicate in the system. Identifying those cases and removing the ones that should be closed has helped with the caseload numbers. When there's been a change of attorneys and just a bulk transfer of case names to the new attorney, the new attorney isn't able to know what's going on with those old cases. And hopefully we're going to get all of that removed from the system by December, and I'll be able to give you a more accurate number. One of the things that we have been talking about and trying to fill in Nye County is getting an appointed counsel coordinator on board, someone that can deal with the attorneys. It's a situation that I believe Mr. Filter is doing in Douglas County, that type of position where you coordinate with the attorneys, and we don't have 8 different attorneys going in 8 different directions and making agreements. So you cover for me this day and I'll cover for you this day, when we need to have a regular schedule and regular appearances. For some reason, the Justice Court insists on running its calendar at the same time District Court runs its calendar, which means an attorney can't be in 2 places at one time. It's a short walk down the hallway. I'm still seeing the bailiffs have to come over looking for attorneys to haul them into District Court when they've got cases pending in Justice Court. And just recently that occurred. We had 12 in custody defendants being handled by the on-duty deputy that morning, and he was hauled off to District Court and had to hand off his caseload to one of the other attorneys out there who was not familiar with the cases at that point in time. I can't watch both what's going on in District Court and Justice Court, so I can't report what happened on those cases in Justice Court because I'm trying to report what's happening in District Court. if we had a court coordinator, someone that could go to the judges and say, look, can't you do an afternoon calendar instead of a 9 o'clock calendar? It would make it so much simpler for our attorneys to be able to be in one place at one time. Um, the justice courts both run their calendars at the same time on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and so we always have that problem. Those are things that I think the appointed council coordinator, which I know that Peter and has been reaching out and looking for people that are willing to fill that position, and it needs to be an experienced defense attorney or an experienced prosecutor for that matter that can deal with the judges and talk to them about just simple things like don't run your calendars at the same time. It just doesn't make any sense because literally you can go out there in the afternoons and none of the courts are in session. I think it would be easier for the jail. It would be easier for the attorneys, and probably in the long run would be easier for the courts. But that's just my comments about what needs to be done. Um, the Tonopah jail did close. The Justice of the Peace in Tonopah is concerned about the fact that all of her in custodies are being transported up to Tonopah for hearings, that they don't have time to meet with their attorneys prior to court because the transport arrives just when court is scheduled to start. And so she's had to delay her calendars to allow time for counsel to talk with their clients. If heaven forbid there's ever a trial that goes overnight in Tonopah, the plan is that they would transport the defendant each day back and forth for court, and that is not conducive to a client that is ready and able to assist his counsel, and it's going to interfere with the counsel ability to consult with his client during the course of the trial. You have to be able to talk to your client during the trial about what has happened during the day. And if your client is getting on a bus going back to Pahrump every day at the end of court, that's going to be a problem. That hasn't happened yet, but it's something that we certainly have our eyes on.
Madam Chair, may I make a comment about that? It's Joni in
Yes,
Tonopah.
Easley, Madam Easley, Madam, whatever you are, Board Member Easley.
Thank
I
you.
think we're droning on
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you.
I just want to piggyback on what he said, and by saying that I was contacted by a district court judge, and it is not uncommon for some of those inmates not to have eaten anything before they left to come to Tonopah for court, and nothing was provided to them either. So it might be worth following up with the district court judges to get their input on some of the problems that they've encountered with transporting prisoners to Tonopah for court. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
And when I met with Justice of the Peace Clapper, she did talk about the fact that she thought that they had taken steps to remedy the feeding of the transported inmates by giving them a sack lunch at the noon break. I was not familiar with failure to feed prior to putting them on the bus to come to Tonopah.
Yes, because it's too early for breakfast, is what I was told.
Well, so those are the issues I have to report on in Nye County. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our outreach advisors?
This is Chris. I think he's given us some ideas of things that we need to work on, and much appreciate the time and the thoughts.
Yes, thank you so much for what you do. Both of you that were able to be here
Yeah,
today.
both of you.
Okay, did we want to go into item B, which was talking more about the models of synthesis and analysis of reporting data, or?
This is Tomasaya for the record. I believe we kind of touched on where we might be going in response to a question. I know you've had a long agenda. I think if there is anything that jumps out at you that you feel should be retained in terms of, we're not trying to take the subjective and make it objective, but we are trying to remove the things that are just informational to set the stage so that, we have real information about those kind of vignettes and what people are seeing. And I just was going to mention that the communication obviously is both ways, where I report to Derek and David about what I'm seeing in billing. And so I will tell them when I'm seeing things and ask for their feedback or awareness, because then they hear about it at court and try to address that. And then on the broader issues, my hope is that in terms of like data, we would be able to actually draw out the fact that people are covering other people's calendars, because I don't know how fair it is to compare an attorney's performance on coverage versus another circumstance. And so we would be prompting for that question, because if you look at the reporting, a lot of situations where so-and-so was covering for somebody else and needed a continuance or whatever, and that's not necessarily, we can kind of like control for that so that it's not, creating spikes of showing unpreparedness that are about other things. And then also, if an attorney shows up as more prepared in certain counties and not in others, then we can start to look at system issues. Are there possibly issues with the courts, and not in terms of calling them out, but being partners and trying to broach those discussions of it's costing the whole, the public fisc money and time for attorneys to try to fight these issues. And I've had some attorneys reach out to me about specific discovery issues they're having in certain counties and not in others that are causing them to have to spend more time. So I've been trying to support them. So if there's anything that, we'll come back with this, and maybe we can next time go through sort of what the new form might look like and solicit some feedback. I don't want to change what's working, and you know what I mean? I want to help anything I can do to improve. I'm not trying to make it more difficult or complex.
Thank you. All right. Maybe we should put this back on in the February meeting or so we can continue to stay on top of it. All right. If we're ready, that's for possible action. I didn't hear a motion being formed through the discussion. So if that's okay, I'd like to move on to item number 10 if we're done with that, or if there's any more board comments. We'll move into the training and pipeline update. Brenda, did you want to give us some information on that? Thank you for your patience today.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, board members. I'm going to start by talking about, we had our LASSO event last week at Boyd Law School. We brought in Ian Wallach and Casey McBroom out of Southern California, their defense attorneys, who talked about their defense of a wrongfully accused janitor out of Victorville, California. It was a very moving presentation. And I think I can't help but think it inspired the students who appeared. They stayed after to talk to the defense attorneys that we were able to bring out from our rural counties. I think including Andrew was able to go as well. David was there. So I think overall it was a successful event. Speaking of LASSO, this summer we had 6 LASSO recipients, 3 1Ls that were in Lyon and Humboldt County, Elko, and Carson City. We had a 2L that was out in Churchill County, and we had 2 recipients receive training stipends for the first time. And that led into our first ever silver tier LASSO recipients, where we had one new graduate accept a job at the Carson City Public Defender's Office, and another one with one of the contractors out in Douglas County. So I was very excited to see the LASSO program actually producing attorneys, indigent defense providers in our rural counties. And has any questions about that? I'll move on to the annual conference.
Hi, Andrew here. I don't know how to raise my hand, but I was at the event and I brought a prospective attorney with me who's currently working in workers' comp defense, and they were so moved by the presentation, and yeah, it's all to say that I may have been able to get an attorney from that event. So thank you, Brenda. Great event.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so the annual conference, we once again intend to contract with NPHF to manage the event and to bring in talent both from Nevada and around the country. Our theme, as Peter mentioned earlier, is going to be technology, and I am hoping to have an ethics course within annual conference this year about the use of technology. And it's tentatively scheduled for March 18th to the 20th in Las Vegas. We are experimenting with a no smoking, no gambling facility there. So hopefully fewer distractions. And Home and I had the opportunity to tour the space last week, and I think it's going to be really good. Facilitate networking for the attorneys, and I think it's just a nice event space. We're trying to wrap up the contracts and hopefully then get our save the dates out in official save the dates out in December. On to virtual training, if there's no questions about the annual conference. Since the last board meeting, we did a two-part training over the summer, enhancing representation of people with disabilities and deaf people. We've also reached out to, for those of you who are able to attend our ethics training prior to the board meeting today, we've reached out to them to do an ethics training on sort of the intersection of indigent defense and as they stand in the shoes of the state because they're being paid by the state. And then Christine Kazemka from the state bar has agreed to do a training on substance abuse. So those should be coming before the end of the year. Christine is out of the country right now, so she won't be back until November, later in the month. So we're excited to hear about her travels and get that on the calendar. And then item D is the externs from Boyd. We had 2 externs this summer. One of them, I think, is looking to help us develop the models of synthesis with HOMA. He is a dual JD master candidate at Boyd or at UNLV, and his master's, I think, is in data analysis. So he's done a prototype of what the Excel spreadsheet might look at. So it was exciting to be able to have him on board this summer. He provided, I think, a lot of good work for us. So that was exciting. And then to follow up on something that was mentioned earlier, specifically to an attorney in Elko, I am wrapping up the information gathering phase of my investigation to determine what our best course is going to be in terms of whether training is going to be sufficient or if we can do something different. So
Just, I'll get a car.
hopefully be able to update you generally at the next meeting.
Oh, you're ready now?
In the car with the phone.
Thank you. We have someone who's not muted, iPhone 2. If you don't mind muting, that'd be great. Sorry, Brenda.
And
I don't have control over that, or else if someone could mute that person.
Yeah, Casey, I'm sure, is working on that. Okay. And that, I think, was all I have for item 10. If anyone has any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. It looks like Mr. Hickman has a question.
Thank you. Just a quick question for Ms. Roberts. At one time the department was doing monthly CLE opportunities and getting those out. And again, understanding there's been some significant transition, but is the goal to get back to a monthly training cadence, or is it less than that?
We're trying to get as close to that as we can. We have had, you said, changes in moving offices. We lost reliable internet access for a period of time. And then we lost Zoom for a period of time. So we are now back up and running. So it is to get into the plan is to get into a more regular cadence on that. Thank you for asking.
Okay, are there any other questions for Ms. Roberts? Any comments? Thank you. All right, well, that was also, oh no, that's for discussion. Great, let's move on to item number 11, which is our workload compliance update. This one's also for possible action. Mr. Handy, you're muted.
All right, I'll jump right into the super fun stuff then, that is workload compliance. So I'll start at the top with Churchill County. Right now, there's basically status quo with Churchill County. They have 2 attorneys in the public defender's office, 1 attorney in the alternate public defender's office, and they have a conflict contract. They have a 7.4 attorney workload requirement. They have added a paid intern position, so they actually were able to hire somebody that received the LASSO scholarship that they paid to come work in the office. And that position is expected to continue. They're hoping that that person will turn into a full-time attorney in the county. They still have both a deputy public defender 1 and 2 position posted. It looks like they have adjusted their salary scales to be more appropriate for what the actual county salary scales are. According to Jacob, they haven't had a lot of bites yet. But they're hoping that we might have some conversation in the next few months here. They have a new county manager, so there's a little bit of change happening in Churchill County right now. So far, it seems to be moving in a good direction. I know in the past, Jacob Summers also asked whether you could hire potentially a social worker in the office. There seems to be positive feeling about that at the county level. That hasn't happened yet, but I also don't know if they, have somebody that they're expected to kind of fill that position or not, or if it's they're looking to work into slowly. We will see that develop and hopefully we'll turn into an actual position because I think we really do need to see a lot more of those other resources out there for indigent defendants and help support the attorneys. So we're in support of that. That'd be something that'd be reimbursable, but we do really need them to add those extra 3 attorneys at least to get up to the workload compliance. I have Douglas County up next. Mr. Filter's here. If I don't know if the chair would have let me defer to him on his update.
Sure.
If he's so
Mr.
inclined.
Filter, Brian, I see him. He's here. If you want to jump on in.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, Madam Chairwoman. I am the director, for the record, I'm Brian Filter, the Director of Indigent Defense for Douglas County. Looking at the monitor report, I think it's somewhat inaccurate and also evolving. We do currently have 5 annual contract attorneys, but what we've been doing heretofore is we actually essentially have 6 because the rotation that we do is a 6 attorney rotation, the 6th attorney being more than one, being hourly contract attorneys. We currently have approximately 12 hourly attorneys that we distribute cases to both on conflict basis and on a regular rotational basis. I'm happy to say that after about 6 months of trying, I'm in the process. It's not quite there yet. It'll be approved by the county commission on November 6th. But I believe we have a 6th annual contract attorney that will be joining us. He will start work on January 1st. And that at that point, we're going to have a 7 attorney rotation. And I think it's also important that the report notes, and it's true, that we do have 2 part-time attorneys handling initial appearances and drug court. We also hand out, well, all of our capital cases go to hourly attorneys, so that adds additional full-time attorneys, if you will. Unfortunately, at this point in time, we have several capital cases in Douglas. So with all that, we're getting pretty close to being into compliance here. We're certainly working towards it. Another thing that I'm working on with Peter is handing off our appeals and capital cases to the NSPD, and that's kind of in process. So we're working hard to get where we need to be. Last time I was here, I told you that the county manager and I are dedicated to having really the premier indigent defense in the rurals in the state. And we're working towards that and we're investing in it. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Clapping from Miss Fitzsimmons. Thank you.
Thanks for the update, Brian. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'll move on to Eureka County. David Sheik already covered this. As you heard, Kelly Brown's retiring at the end of December. It looks like the board out there is poised to hire Jane Eberhardy to cover that caseload. It's a 0.3 compliance requirement. It'd probably be a 0.3 contract with Jane. Like was mentioned, we'll be monitoring just as a matter of course now and providing those quarterly reports as the amended consent judgment requires her amount of cases under the NSPD contract. If we're able to hire for a 3rd position in White Pine County, that would be phenomenal to help bring another attorney and to help offset those cases so that Jane really can work those cases in Eureka County and White Pine County as needed. Lyon County is a more difficult one to analyze for a lot of the reasons we mentioned earlier and are mentioned in the monitor's report. Right now, it looks like there's 4 full-time attorney in Mansfield Mayo, that law firm. Mario Walder's firm is mostly covering juvenile cases. They only have one attorney that's available on the list right now. Olga Walder was removed because she still hasn't met the compliance with the CLE requirement. So if she were to just provide us with 5 CLE hours annually as required, she'd be eligible to be put back on the list and could potentially help Mario out with that caseload in Lyon County. Cale Brock has the 3rd contract in Lyon County. We keep reaching out. He indicates he doesn't have any subcontracts. When we look at the cases, it looks like a lot of them are going to attorneys who are taking a lot of cases in other Northern Nevada counties off of a selection list. So folks like Ray Rashenko, Rich Davies' office. And so we're aware of who a lot of the cases are going to, and they are qualified and on our list, but we have serious concerns about Cale and whoever these people might be who aren't subcontractors actually being able to take care of the workload. Lyon County requires 12 attorneys, if I'm not mistaken. 12 attorneys exactly worth of caseload coverage, and having a total of 6 across 3 contracts isn't remotely close to what's needed. Obviously, we'll be looking to work with them to clean up the data, but I don't think cleaning up the data is going to get from 6 attorneys to a 12 attorney need. Really, it is a matter of, I think, letting the county know, look, you have attorneys who are contracting to provide 3 or 4 attorneys worth of service. We can only identify 1 in the contracts, and there are no subcontracts to provide that. And working with the county to correct either the way those contracts are structured going forward, work with the attorneys to make sure they are subcontracting. We can identify which cases are going where, if they're working with more attorneys than they are reporting, and potentially decreasing caseloads for these attorneys in other places. Like for Mansfield Mayo working in Humboldt County along with the PD's office, it may be a matter of, hey, look, you might not be the solution here. We might have to go see other options so you can handle the caseload in Lyon County. I'll also mention Mineral County, as discussed earlier. They have 1 attorney currently. They may have a conflict counsel. 1 attorney is representing they have a conflict contract, but we haven't seen a copy of that yet. So we'll be digging into that. They need 2.1 attorneys in Mineral County. Obviously, there's a dearth of attorneys there, and there's going to be some changes in the courts going forward. I don't know if that'll take more attorneys out of the system in that county. Hopefully it doesn't, but it's certainly a possibility. For Nye County, we've talked a lot about Nye County. David covered most of the high points or low points as it might be in Nye County. Currently, there's 8 contracts. They also require 12 attorneys under the weighted caseload study. I'm informed that they plan on soliciting again for more attorneys in the next month. And I sincerely hope that the county actually contemplates hiring more than just 1 attorney at a time, hiring as many qualified applicants as apply and are willing to and capable of doing the work. And I really, really need to see progress there from them. Otherwise, as we've had a lot of discussion about before, things need to drastically change in the area. Last on my list is White Pine County. We've heard about White Pine County already. The attorney caseload, it seems like it's met. We have 2 full-time attorneys from the NSPD. Jane Eber already has a contract for 1.8 attorneys, and Julie Kavanaugh Bill's covering the juvenile caseload, which isn't insubstantial. Her contract amounts to about 2/3 of an attorney, just under 2/3 of an attorney, or just over half, somewhere in there. But really, the caseload's not huge, but it is a good time savings because all of those are, all the clients are held in Elko, where she's located. So it reduces some of the travel to be required to have more frequent interactions with clients. And she's also familiar with the courts and judges out there. I think it's a significant benefit for the NSPD to have her out there working those cases. We do also, as a part of, you can see in the list I provided her, we are monitoring her caseload as a contractor for the NSPD as well. Right now, she seems to have a pretty reasonable caseload across the state. I'm happy to answer any questions about workload compliance, either by county or generally, or how we're tracking this or whatever else you might have for this item.
Okay. Any questions? Comments?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms. Cecil.
Yeah, it's just a comment about Nye counties. Am I premature, or can I
No,
make a comment?
please take the floor.
Okay, thank you. And it's a question, and I don't know if this can be done or if it's even appropriate, but I wonder if for caseloads, if we have ever compared what's in legal server to what the district attorney's office currently shows as open cases. Because based on conversations I have had, there's a big gap there. So I also wonder if some cases are not being closed because I don't believe that the district attorney is showing the same number of open cases. And that's my comment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Eastley. Mr. Handy, did you have a comment on that? Or
I
Mr.
could, or
Sheik?
David Sheik could answer as
Yep.
well.
Thank you.
I would love to see the district attorney's list of open cases and compare it to legal server. I think that would assist me in determining what the real caseload is.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't know if they track cases the same as legal server does. Again, we have situations where felonies are charged in the same document as misdemeanors, and sometimes we pick up two case numbers.
Yeah.
Open two
I saw that in
cases.
your backup.
And we have cases that are opened as PC cases, which is it's an arrest for probable cause, assigned a case number, and the appearance is made, and the defendant is either released or kept in custody, and then given a return date. And on the return date, if the DA's office has determined not to file charges, they may close their case, but our PC case is being held open in legal server. We've tried to alleviate that by not assigning counsel at the PC stage, but I would love to be able to work with the DA's office on that. And next time I'm out there, I will ask them whether or not they can provide that to me.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great. That should be helpful. Any other questions or comments on item number 11?
Just one question on the Nye County while we're there. Mr. Haney, you mentioned that they were recruiting for additional attorneys. Are they also recruiting for the appointed council administrator position as well, or is that still in discussion?
So what we've done is we got funding in our budget built in to directly solicit for that position as under our auspices. So it'd be a contractor of the department to fill that role rather than the county filling that role.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, if there's no more comments, that one was for possible action. I didn't hear anything specific, so I'm going to keep moving on unless Mr. Weiss stops me. Item number 12 is a list of our upcoming meetings for December, February, and June. June is our usual in-person, and it looks like we're still working out a location on that. Do we have any comments on that, Mr. Handy? If not, I'm going to have a blanket ask and then move us forward.
I don't have any comments on that. There's no changes from my end between when the agenda went out and now about proposed.
All right, if we could, it would be super helpful for the board members if we could have those put onto our calendars just as holds, since we know them. If Casey or someone could help us out and put that on, that would be great. Gosh, I would say just put a hold for 3 hours. If we wrap less, that'd be helpful, but that way we can plan accordingly. All right, so if that is good, I'd like to move into public comment. I'll ask if there's any public comment. Ms. Fitzsimmons, it looks like you have something to say. Floor is all yours. And you're muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to point out there's a lot of good work going on, but a lot of things for various reasons are getting put off. The Davis deadline is October 26th next year. Sine die is probably the first part of June. And if a lot of this is dependent on funding, particularly adequate compensation for the state public defender's office, there's just, some things that are out of our hands. There's some things that are not your hands. I'm sorry, old habits. But there's one thing Franny started with it, and I'd like to end with it. The chair stated early on when we were talking about issues with indigent defenders dealing with DID staff, the chair said if we don't know about it, we can't fix it. And I agree with that. I did talk to Peter Handy. I talked to him last week about this at length. He apparently didn't bring it on, or maybe thought somebody else would bring it up at this meeting. I'm out of the game. I'm supposed to be retired, but in the last month, for various other reasons, I have talked to 3 separate indigent defenders, all stars, all among the best, in my opinion, that could be recruited to do contracts through DIDS in Northern Nevada. Each one of them has told me they do not intend to do any further work for DIDS. They don't get paid for dealing with staff on billing questions. The the perception, I think Miss Sayar indicated that some of them are writing her back. You know, I'd love to see those emails. They're writing her back, but that perception, which is what matters for this, as Allison said, holistic defense services, has got to be one of cooperation. This is not state purchasing. This is something where we have unique people who are under unique pressures, who professionally going out, they're getting beat up by judges, they're getting beat up by their clients, who knows? And it should be that if something, I understand you guys are being audited, but if something causes you concern, I think if you could have, as Allison offered, or perhaps David Sheik could do it. I mean, you don't want his time being spent elsewhere. It would mean so much if they were dealing with someone who had been in their shoes and understood what they're dealing with. And if we, I mean, 3 for 3. It's not like I talked to 4 of them, and I'm telling you 3 left. 3 left, and you know what's going to happen. Those people have good other jobs, and if you lose them, what's going to happen is that people who don't maybe have the ability or the commitment and just want the hourly rate, you're going to be having them take under these contracts. I know I'm being preachy. I know you have a hard job, but I'm just telling you, I'm gravely concerned about this, and that's all.
Thank you, Laura, for the context. It's public comment, so I can't engage. Anybody else here that wants to speak during public comment? Patrick Mansfield, looks like you just popped on camera for me, so go ahead.
Right, I did. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So I really wanted to jump on because I never really know when these meetings are, but I understand that we're a hot topic of most of them. And so I wanted to jump on, 1, to introduce myself, but 2, kind of express my firm's kind of discouragement with the whole situation. For whatever reason, there's such a divide in communication between the boots on the ground, i.e. our firm, and you all, respectfully. I've never been contacted, not one time. Maybe Brenda is awesome, and Peter's awesome. We've spoken quite a few times. But as far as sitting back and then looking at the numbers, getting them off a legal server, I understand that that's kind of what to go off of, and I also understand. I'll be the first to admit I'm terrible at logging my time. I am. It's a work in progress. I've brought on paralegals to help me with this. We've changed our whole note system. So I understand that that's huge. I do. I'm taking full responsibility of that. But I didn't see anybody when a jury verdict just came back last night at 5:30 in Lyon County of an acquittal. I didn't see anybody there. No one talked to me about how that worked with the ADW. No one talked to me how, all the motions and limines that I've won. I've won 3 preliminary hearings, not get bound over this year. Everyone that's practiced understands how hard that is. The motion to suppresses that I've won this year, and this isn't me preaching. this is me just saying that I just really feel like the you guys aren't getting a full picture of the actual performance, which at the end of the day, my firm is delivering to the best of our ability for the actual individual clients. And at the end of the day, that's what the Constitution really carves out. And I feel like that's what we should all be here for. So again, Brenda and Peter have been awesome, but I really just wanted to open my line of communication up, and Massey Mayo. She feels the same way as I do. And we have 4 other attorneys in our firm. So I guess what I'm saying is we're open for communication. Shouldn't we all be in this together to work towards the common goal? Because that's what we're here for. We just brought on 2 more attorneys to try and facilitate, to try and help everyone. And then it's discouraging to hear that, well, Massey Mayo maybe she's not the answer in Humboldt. So you're going to take away from Humboldt County a qualified attorney because in the background you don't know that we're trying to bring on another attorney to facilitate Lyon County because I suck at billing. It's just really unfortunate that this is kind of the divide that I'm seeing, and this is where we're at. So I don't want it to be that way. We are gearing our firm for the DIDs, and it should just be it really should just be one ended goal, and we should all work together, and that's where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time today to show up and provide your comments. I'll assure you
You're
they're
welcome.
not falling on deaf ears. Okay. Any other public comment? All right. Hearing none, I will adjourn the Board of Indigent Defense for the 23rd of October, and we'll see you all on December 4th, 2025 at 1 p.m.
Good job. Thank you.
Good job, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.